Preview-SMTN.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome to Shin Megami Tensei Network. Link, I hope you know because I sure don't at the time of this recording. I'm your host, Spencer Presley, and joining me is someone so cool I had to beg and plead on my knees to come on here and talk about Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne HD Remaster. And, special guest, I want you to introduce yourself because I was reminding myself from the Megaton Marathon podcast that you guys have such a great opener for guests that, like, where you guys all be like, oh, I'm blah, blah, blah from, like, blah, blah, blah game series. And I'm like, oh, that's usually so good because normally what I do is I just try and make my guests feel as uncomfortable as possible, as humanly possible. So I'll let you introduce yourself however you want.
Aw, thank you. And it was no problem at all. I'm really glad to be on the show again. You're a blast to chat with. So, so my name's Allisa James. And, you know, as he stated before, I co-host the Megami Marathon podcast. I also guest on Combo Chain, and I currently write for the video game site Gamepur. So that's my little thing.
Now, what is the ratio of readers on Gamepur? Is it like half people who like to play video games and half furries? Like, where's the cutoff?
I know, right? It's a secret, but it's like 1/3. No,
it's 100% furries.
Exactly.
So you, along with everyone else on the internet who was not slighted Atlas or whatever in recent history, were lucky enough to get a preview code, which also I love when previews are just like the full game, but they can't say it. You've got the code for SMT3 HD Remastered Nocturne 3 Edition, and I just wanted to talk to you about it, gush away, because I've had a little bit of time with the JP release, but I was pretty underwhelmed by a lot of the previews in kind of a mixture of ways, and I kind of wanted to, sort of like how when I had you on last year to talk about a collective sense of what it was like reviewing Royal, kind of now looking into the preview perspective of Nocturne HD, you know?
Right.
So, first off, I want to say, loved your preview. Your preview was very, very great. One of the, I guess, kind of easier complaints with mine, with a lot of the previews I saw, though, that I thought was kind of strange, a lot of them felt like reviews to me. Like, a lot of them just sort of felt like, I'm gonna just review this and barely talk about the story, which is, like, fine, because, like, it's gotta be hard covering a game that has, A, been out for months in Japan, and is very readily available if people want to check it out, and B, has been out for multiple decades now in English.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So for you, though, like, what was the whole kind of process like? A, from starting the preview and then kind of like did you like have a sort of like perspective you maybe wanted to like kind of lean on more than one than the other? Like, how did you want to give a spotlight to certain aspects in your preview?
So, when I kind of do these kind of previews and reviews where it's like remasters of very old titles, you know, that I know is going to bring in a new audience, I try to frame it in a way that will be more, you know, it will be easier for newer readers or newer players to grasp. So I wanted to make sure that my preview was accessible to them. So that's why I decided, after, you know, kind of writing out my rough draft, I decided to sort of split it up into little categories. Like, you know, really went down with the visuals, like what they could expect coming, you know, into this game visually. In terms of the story, I wanted to make sure I at least gave like a nice introduction so they could grasp the story a bit more when they first start, you know, since especially if they're someone who's come off like the recent Persona games that are way more involved in telling the plot. And, Nocturne, as we all know, is much more like subtle and pulled back. So I wanted to make sure I gave like a nice summary so they could understand a bit more what they're getting into with that beginning part, up until about the cutoff for the preview. And then after that, I made sure I could go over the gameplay so they could know how the basic system works, how the strategy, comes from that, how it kind of differs maybe from like the One More system in Personas 3, 4, and 5, and just in general, like from other RPGs, how it differs. So, I was kind of framing it in that context. And of course, I also went into a bit of like the changes, DLC, things like that as well.
It was one of the other interesting things is I kept, it was like almost like waiting for like the Pee-wee Playhouse like word of the day. Every time I was like, how long can this preview go without bringing up Persona or just like that funny thing? Because think about it, when Nocturne originally came out, no one was being like, oh my god, from the makers of Persona 2. It was just like if you weren't there in like the early 2000s, like no one was comparing this to Persona, whereas now it's just releasing in such a totally different environment.
Yeah, that's what makes it so interesting, So that was like definitely like a forethought. Like even if I didn't want to, be kind of blunt and just kind of I didn't want to beat it over people's head that this is not Persona, but I wanted to at the same time detail it as such so anyone coming from those games could still understand that this is a very different game, Like don't expect it like almost anything from that franchise to carry over to this game right here. It's just not.
So for like a little bit of like extra context for your copy you're playing right now, I guess what system are you playing on for review?
Right now I'm playing it for Nintendo Switch.
Okay. And then my other one is, did all previews and I guess like copies that went out, did they just give you guys like the digital deluxe edition? Because I was surprised how much everyone was like, and here's all the DLC too. It was like, because Atlus hasn't done that forever.
Yeah, true. But yeah, they actually did. They gave us the digital deluxe edition, so we have all the DLC, so which is great because it means that we can go more in depth about it. Which I didn't try to dig too deep into it now because I feel like that'll definitely be more for my review.
Can I give you my crackpot conspiracy theory reason for why they included the DLC for media coverage?
Absolutely. I love this.
Okay, so one of the like biggest like little pet peeves I had when previews went out is that little PlayStation blog thing they did of like, here, we're bringing the Dante meme back, and like Dante coverage was kind of sprinkled in with some of the previews and stuff. I very rarely saw people mention that Dante is still paid, which like there's a whole argument to get into whether he should be paid at all or how he should be included. I just think it was like they basically were like, hey, let's give all the DLC so people can talk about Merciful Mode, which in actuality almost all the coverage for Merciful is, do you want it easy and just check out the story? There you go download that. But the Dante thing is kind of a weird one of like, in my dumb like conspiracy PR brain, if we give it to reviewers, it's going to act like they might think, oh, we're more likely to include talking about this without saying, oh, but it is an extra $10. Because when you're reviewing that, you don't necessarily know what's what. Like, you would be amazed, people listening, when talking to reviewers, like, unless it's something they actively follow, like, how much a game is even, like, is still sometimes, like, up in the air for people. Like, I was talking to someone who is reviewing the game right now, like they're reviewing Nocturne, and they're like, wait, it's not $30? I'm like, no, it's 50. They were like, of course. His whole attitude changed when he was like, oh my god, I thought this thing was like $30 or whatever. Like, no. So it's just that kind of like added value proposition. Because one of the funny things, even after when I put up my video talking about why I don't think Nocturne is worth, Nocturne HD specifically. It's so hard criticizing Nocturne HD without people just thinking I hate Nocturne, which really sucks, but when I kind of came to the conclusion that I personally don't think it's worth $50 in the state it was in, and explaining it to it, you don't even hear a lot of people really listening and think of like, honestly, I don't even view Nocturne as a $50 game. I view Nocturne in HD as a $60 game, because I think the complete experience is with Dante and Raito. So like, if you want to really experience that game, like, you gotta cough up $60.
That's true. That's true. Although, at least with Raito, like, he automatically just comes in the game. It's just if you want to replace Dante instead. Because how it works is that when you start a new game, and let's say you bought the DLC, it gives you the regular new game, which is just Raito, and then it has the Maniacs Edition new game, and that's the one that'll replace him with Dante. So that's how that works.
I love when LaRue and a couple other people mentioned this from the PS blog. I feel like I rag on Atlas West so much. Like, I didn't feel like being the first person to point it out, but it was one of those funny things I like how people picked up on the PR release on preview day. They were talking about finally Westerners can experience the version with Raito, which is true. We've never officially gotten to play this version of the game before. But they were like, it's the first version of the game that came out. And I'm like, you guys are aware that, like, on consoles, that's not. It was Raito's the last version of Nocturne to come out, but what's another funny thing that I don't see a lot of people talk about, and it's been very, very, I was going to say, like, poorly covered, but it's like, it's not out there unless you, like, are a stupid, dumb nerd like me and are annoying people about it. Like, did you know, unless you're playing the Asian or Korean version of Nocturne on consoles, PC is the only way you can play the original version of Nocturne. So not with Raito and not with Dante.
Oh, wow.
So
that's actually interesting, yeah.
The way, if you look at the Steam page right now, it shows that Raito is a free download and Dante's still paid, but then it's like, wait, so if I don't download Raito, how does it work? So the only way to play that in English is currently on PC, and Atlas West has no plans to patch in the original version, which I think kind of sucks. It's like, that seems like a total win. Like, that seems like a really easy win of, like, you don't have to add anything really new into this game. It has been shown that it was doable on consoles, but it was only in the Chinese and Asian markets. But people aren't really talking about it, because I think, like, if you even just changed the name and kept the price totally the same thing, just call this Nocturne HD Definitive Edition or something, and it is all three versions for $60, I think that's almost like more of a win than it is now, where everything is so split off, sectioned, and like so many little asterisks next to everything of like, because think about it, like, you know what's cooler than playing one new version of a classic is like, people have never played two versions of this game in the West in English, and they're just kind of ignoring that on consoles, because like, as big of a release as this is going to be on Steam, like, a majority of players are going to play this on consoles.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I was curious, how do you feel about that? Because I think, I only saw, 2 PC codes. Like, I know they're offering PC codes. Like, it's not like you're trying to hide the coverage for it, but even, like, that little aspect of it, I've just heard not a lot of opinions really up for. It's like, how do you feel not getting that OG version, I guess, as a Switch player?
To be honest, that's a really good question. I guess for me, I gotta be honest, I was so excited to finally have Raito in my game.
I know. It's like, I'm such an asshole for, like, complaining about these things, but it's like, it's like, I wish I could just be like, I fucking love Raito, and I'm so happy I can finally play this officially in English on modern systems, but yeah, I just can't ever turn off the, like, dumb journalist part of my brain.
No, it makes sense, you know. It's honestly, it is a really cool option that, like, you can kind of customize your experience. So, you know, you can essentially play 3 different versions of this game that, like you said, you know, was never made available outside Japan and Asia. So I do like that the PC version actually does offer that kind of level of customization in that regard. I think for console, I'm wondering, I mean, yeah, I feel like a lot of console players probably wouldn't think of it that way. Like, I feel like, you know, a lot of them are just kind of like, oh, this is cool, I can just swap between, you know, Raito or Dante, and then that's kind of it. But, yeah, I do like that PC does offer that kind of level of, like, you know, you could change it up like that. So, I definitely see where you're coming from.
My only hope right now is that there's a Asian English release that comes out, and then I will have to like double stupid triple dip on this game. Because then if they release it in Asia, they're not just going to include Raito as is. Like, so watch there be like 5 different SKUs of this game that people have to end up collecting.
I know, right? Oh my gosh.
But yeah, kind of getting back to the game though, with the limited time you've had with it, and you playing on the Switch, were you wanting Switch for like that portability? Like, what led you to sort of picking that version if you had a choice at all?
Yeah, I did. They actually gave us the choice between the three platforms, so that was nice. I picked Switch because one, I did want to see. I did like the portability aspect, and I wanted to try it out and see how the game runs docked versus undocked. You know, if there's any like significant frame drops, things like that. So that was my main reason. I know the PS4 version. I think it's a little more stable. That's what I've been hearing.
Yeah, very little.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I haven't heard. It's not much of a difference, but I heard it's there. So
that was, by the way, that was like one of my favorite things about your review. That like I even screenshotted it, but I just forgot to ever like share it out with it when I tweeted about your preview going up. How you were literally like one of the only previews I saw that talked about the technical performance at all, which boggled my mind.
Yeah. I feel like because when you get in the moment, like you're kind of like, oh wow, it's a fun game, and then it's like, and it's funny that I actually brought it up because I think I am one of, when it comes to turn-based JRPGs, I am probably one of the most forgiving people when it comes to frame rate drops. Like, I remember when I reviewed years ago Conception 2, and I swear that game dropped to like 3 frames a second. Like,
were you playing the 3DS version?
Yes, I was.
Yeah,
so,
those old Spike Chunsoft 3DS ports, it was like, you guys were so busy wondering if you could do it, you never stopped to ask, should we do this port?
Exactly. Like, I think the only reason why I picked it was because I really wanted the double screen, but I'm like, maybe I should have gone with the Vita version. But like, honestly, it other than I was just like, wow, this is some crazy frame rate, it didn't like, and I think I noted in the review too, it didn't hamper my enjoyment at all because it was a turn-based, and I was like, it's still a fun game, has a good battle system. So that was kind of how I was looking at it first. And then I was like, you know what? I probably should still mention it. Like, from what I'm getting, it's a lot better now than what it was before. So the patches, yeah.
That's like the sad part is I had so many people before previews went up that were like, guys, they know it's bad. They're gonna fix it. Like, they're gonna keep patching it. Like, don't worry. And what was like extra funny is like when we got the release date trailer last month, I had actually asked friends of mine at Sony about like had it gone through cert yet, and they were like, oh yeah, the game was already all passed out. Like, the game was done like last month, like, and everything. It was all submitted. It was like as soon as that last Japanese patch went out in March, I think early March, that was the version they submitted for consoles and Steam and stuff. And that's the same version you're playing right now. And it was like so funny to me of like, I'm pretty sure that like they would like if I was them, I know, and it's like a weird thing too of like, oh, we have more patches coming, or like, because right now, like, if it was a bigger deal, there's no way to really talk about it without hurting sales. Of like, hey, our game has problems, which is also a PlayStation 2 game, that the problems aren't really in there, but don't worry, we'll fix them eventually. Like, the Japanese release had that problem a lot of as soon as the game was out, people were immediately kind of talking about it. Whereas I thought with the Western release, because we knew about those problems, and the release date was taking so long to get announced, I was like, okay, they're clearly going to iron all of it out, but it just looks like they just got to a point where they were like, okay, how much more money are we going to give the contractors for this game? Okay, that's about it. All right, just ship it off and go. Like, because they have fixed stuff. You're right. They've added, like, the menu lag is much more reduced. There are way less instances of slowdown, but they are still there. Like, the fact that and I know this hasn't really been any like previous stuff, but like the fact that like one of the most iconic fights ever, the Matador fight, literally goes to single frame slowdown during the cinematic part only. It's just like, it's not a good look.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But like, yeah, and like it goes back to like how it's a turn at the end of the day, and I have heard a lot of people tell me this. Like at the end of the day, it's a turn-based RPG. Is the performance affecting your battles? God no, never. It's just one of those things. If I think it's like it's a two-factor deal of we live in a year where right now, if you and me were degenerate criminal scum, we could go and download a PlayStation 2 emulator and play this game in native 4K at 60 to even 120 frames per second with no problems. Yeah. And to just see it kind of limited and be more of a situation of not, and it wasn't even like, oh, we're doing this because something will be broke with the animations, or oh, this is the author's like the author's intent. Like no one's coming out there and saying it. They're just saying, oh, it's capped to be capped. Like when the PC coverage was coming out, did you notice how people were like screen grabbing the replies from Atlas West being like, yeah, the game is capped at 30 on purpose. And the problem isn't that it's capped at 30. The problem is that it's capped at 30 and there's no explanation as to why. Because like on day one that mod probably exists even now. Like that mod to unlock the frame rate is going to come before people have even beaten the first dungeon.
That is true, honestly. PC modders work very quickly, so it's funny because I was online too, kind of checking out how people felt about it. So yeah, like you said, it's very mixed. Like you have people who are kind of like, well, it's turn-based, it's not affecting anything, and then I've seen some people say that, and I don't know how true this is because I haven't, delved into it that deeply yet, but I've seen people say that when they actually parse through, like, the coding, that the the frame rate is directly tied in with, like, how the game is running, like animations and stuff. And if you wanted to make it 60 frames, you would have to recode it. So it's like, yeah, but with the price that they're charging for it, it wouldn't have been that big of, I should say big of a deal, but I think it was definitely something that should have been considered, It's like, if it was like they were charging 20 or 30, I could be like, okay, that's fine, whatever. Mm-hmm. But if it's like a $50 game, why not at least consider to see how feasible that would be? It would be kind of nice. Like, yeah, like
we're still in a world where Nocturne is $10, like as cheap as you want. You can right now turn on a PS3 and buy that game with Dante for the price of Dante's DLC alone. And that's the full game with less technical problems. It runs the same. The only difference is the lighting is going to be a little bit different. And so that's a lot harder of an argument than being like, okay, hey, is achievements and portability or being on Steam worth that extra $40,
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that's something that, like, people, I guess, would have to decide for themselves what they'd want to do. It's funny because I actually own the PS2 copy with my PS2, so...
I like so it, especially with everything going on, like, I've been... surprised how much I've been using my PS3. Like, it's just kind of always hooked up next to me, like in my recording setup. And it's just been funny of like going back to certain games and things and being like, wow, I'm surprised like how well like this PS3 like holds up for just being like a good backwards compatibility machine thing.
Yeah, it does. It's really good. I've been playing, like, it's really nice because just a lot of like niche games on there. Like, I was actually able to get Vagrant Story, and that's like impossible to get right now unless you want to cough up some serious money. So
like, I bought Vib Ribbon when Sean Layden was trending, when all the Jim Ryan hate stuff was going on, and I was like, what?
Wow.
I was like, what? Just for Sean Layden, I'm finally gonna buy this digitally because I've played it before, but I've never really messed around with it. And since I have the PS3 hooked up, one of the best parts about Vib Ribbon is anytime you put a CD in the game, it will it's like a make your own rhythm game. And I was showing it to Mary by just without her knowing I was playing it. She was like, "What is this weird game you're playing?" And I did like the tutorial, and she had no real reaction. And then I like stick in like the newest like BTS CD that we have on hand, and she's like, "Why does this game have BTS?" It's like, it has every song ever. That's the best part about it. Like, the idea of playing a PlayStation 1 Nana Ansha game while playing, like, 2021 BTS music is very surreal.
Oh yeah. I can imagine that like dissonance. That's awesome though.
But yeah, so kind of going into it's a tough ask. And another not like problem, but like another weird thing about everything was I don't think enough people are talking about that. I feel like May is way too crowded for this thing to come out. Like May just has so many big boy releases. Like for you, like are there any other like big May releases that are gonna sink your attention away?
Um, well, that's my problem because I tend to play like smaller games anyway. But I know one off the top of my head that I'm like, oh, this might interfere is what game was it again? Hold on, give me 1 second. I love how like I'm already just blanking.
Well, it's because you're embarrassed to say you're really excited to play Metopia again for
I know,
$50.
yeah. that is the true reason, honestly. Yeah, it was Rune Factory 5. I've been really looking forward to, and I know that's already going to be a conflict, and that means I'm going to have to, unless I end up reviewing that game too, which actually would probably make things worse if I don't.
Just have you do both back to back, no problem. You know what's funny is like Nocturne like is not actually that crazy long, at least thankfully. So in terms of review commitment, it's not that bad.
It's not. That's the good thing about it. Yeah, but I'm looking at it too. We also have Resident Evil Village, Mass Effect Legendary Edition.
Which like, I think that one I cannot believe there are not more comparisons about. Like it's literally releasing like in the same month. It's an HD collection. For $60, you're getting every Mass Effect game 1 through 3 with all of their DLC, and then for like for once an EA game looks like a better value proposition than like an Atlas game, which is just so crazy.
That is, when you really think about it, it's like EA.
And I mean, and also like, and they're both situations of, oh hey, we're working with the lighting and stuff, and I feel like even outside of the fact that Mass Effect is obviously a very, very popular, even with all the stains it's had recently, like Mass Effect, like people are still looking at that HD remaster and being like, wow, they really put a lot of time and effort into this. Where Nocturne HD has updated lighting, but I feel like you either hear people not comment on it or don't like the end results.
Yeah, I feel like it. Like, I guess for me personally, like, I really like it, but I get it too. I know some people were kind of complaining, and this is actually a pretty rare complaint, but I know it's the same thing with the Mass Effect, Legendary Edition, where people were complaining about that lighting as well. I think because people are kind of used to games having a certain, like, atmospheric sort of feel to it, and lighting really has an impact. And even though when you can objectively look at comparisons in terms of both of these games and go, well, obviously it's because it does look muddier or whatever, but that muddiness in a way kind of does have an impact on that like mood and atmosphere of the game that they were kind of going for. So I could see why people don't really care for it, like those kind of updates.
Yeah, and at the very least, it'd be something that'd be, I think, for both of these cases, Mass Effect and Nocturne, why not just include a original lighting filter? These base games are still running underneath everything. Like, if you go into the code and just kind of make it a switch of like, hey, do you want old lighting or do you want new lighting? This actually kind of goes into one of my next questions I want your opinion on. I've been really interested in the not really. It's been more of a discussion than I think like negatively bashing one way or the other, but I've been enjoying seeing people talking about the updated translation, and I've been really surprised that people haven't really been calling it what it is. Like, people have been talking like, oh no, it's modern Atlas translation, they're going to be like butchering the original and blah blah blah. I'm surprised no one's really talked about it. Like, they didn't like retranslate the game; they localized it for the first time. Like, when they were translating that game for the first time, there was no voice acting, so they could have a certain tone with it. I guarantee you right now that if all you did was take Nocturne and just add voice acting with it, there would be parts that sound weird or outdated or like something that they probably would have wanted to fix. But then it also gets into a thing of like, I think it'd be cool if both like translations were still there, but obviously like that would never happen. Like, Nocturne HD doesn't even like properly like credit half of the original game staff, so like clearly it's like history is not like that big of an importance for this project. But I don't think the translation of the new one is bad. I think all the voice actor choices are pretty good. There was no like groan worthy choice that I saw. There was like the only one that I'm like, okay, that was predictable, but I would have done something different is like for Dante, and that's only because I would have fucking died if they got the original voice actor from DMC2 Dante to come back, because he's never done anything else.
I know, that would have been amazing if they could have. Oh man, that's what I was kind of thinking too. But honestly, I'm a huge fan of the voice acting. I really love the people who they chose. I was actually shocked, like, at how immediately taken I was by, because I was on the fence beforehand, because I kind of grew up on these kind of RPGs that had no voices. You kind of added your own voice to these characters, and you had like a certain image in your head about how you felt like they would sound or whatnot. So I was kind of worried about that. I was like, oh man, I hope there's not too much like a weird dissonance about this, like that they're not gonna really like get the characters. And I feel like they really do. Like, I was shocked. And they did touch up the localization a bit, too. It wasn't like like you said, it wasn't like a whole retranslation. But they got they have the original localization staff from, Atlas West. So I guess back then Atlas USA they were called, to actually retouch things. So you do notice things here and there that sound smoother, because, like you said, it has to be like red lines versus just like voice lines, versus lines that you would just read. So if it sounded a little weird, it wasn't a big deal back then, but would definitely, kind of raise some eyebrows.
Oh yeah, I mean, even going into like talking about writing and reviews and stuff, like I think that's a great comparison for why they would change the text just because they're adding a voice cast. Like for me, when I've done just straight written reviews, I definitely don't write the way I talk. And if you go back to my old Devil Survivor 2 review, that was me writing a review traditionally on paper and then just reading it out into a microphone, and it's very stilted. It sounds like I'm doing the most boring NPR segment of all time. Whereas now when I'm talking into stuff for reviews, I'm more talking, taking notes, and fine-tuning things, as opposed to like, because like you can always tell when someone's kind of reading off a script, whether it be something like a review or like reading a translation and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a huge difference. It was funny because I kind of thought of the same thing when, for the first time, I had actually written a review that was also going to be read as a script. It was for my Persona 5 Royale review, and I realized there was a huge difference in terms of how I started framing my writing for that, knowing that it would have to be read. I don't think I didn't do the audio for that. I believe it was Logan who did it, and he did a phenomenal job. But yeah, I had to be very mindful of how I wrote it, and I actually had to read it to myself multiple times to make sure that it flowed. It sounded, didn't sound stilted like you said. It sounded more like conversational, smoother, natural. So I think that was something that they did have to make sure they went over with this. And you could tell too, it does sound like in certain parts a bit more conversational, like more about how someone would actually sound saying something in real life versus just kind of writing a general script that's a little more, I won't say loyal, but a little closer to the original Japanese version, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I have never had that happen yet, of like something I wrote, someone to like reading it out. Like that sounds like honestly like a nightmare. I would wake up in a cold sweat of like, I feel like anyone trying to like go off of like either my writings or something I've ever done before, I'm just like I would just immediately start having like the meat sweats of like, oh no, oh my god, no, because like I can stop myself, I can sound dumb and be fine with it. Having someone else have to like read my garbage would just be like too much pressure.
No. Your stuff is great, honestly, but it was a lot of pressure because I was kind of thinking that I was like, oh my god, I have to make sure this sounds good because it was a little embarrassing. Someone actually reading my writing out for the first. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this needs to be cleaned up. I cannot send anything less than perfection.
It's like that moment of when the teacher catches you writing a note, and instead of you reading it, the teacher just reads it, and the whole class has to hear.
Yeah, it's exactly that.
Another thing I wanted to talk about with the HD version, to kind of pick your brain, because we haven't really talked about this since the Strikers thing came up. How do you feel, less as a, like, person in the media, how do you more feel as, like, a fan about now we're double dipping into the whole, hey, digital deluxe version, you get it 5 days early?
It's interesting because you are seeing this, like, crop up more. Like, Guilty Gear Strive, which I've been covering a lot, too, I've noticed they've done the same thing. And, I mean, I guess for me personally, it doesn't bother me because I just kind of buy and play games at my own pace. But I'm not sure how I feel about this being an overall trend. Like, the reasons are obvious. It's so people will just buy digital because more of the money kicks back to the publisher that way versus, getting a physical copy. But yeah, I'm not really sure about how I feel if this becomes an industry standard. It's a bit weird to me, like that you would have these like earlier versions, like so a certain amount of people can play this game. I think the main reason why I'm worried is because of the spoiler issue, because it's already a massive issue, like where people post spoilers like literally the same day that a game comes out. Like they'll have the final boss, And I'm worried, like, is this going to be a big problem, too, where it's going to, it's then going to force people who don't want to see those spoilers kind of, like, feel like they have to buy this game earlier so they can play it earlier.
I hate nothing more on YouTube. Like, I would rather watch a 24-hour live stream of Ben Shapiro at Home Depot than, like, when I go onto YouTube and I watch a trailer for, like, let's say, Strikers was a recent example, and the first video underneath it is like, do you want to see Zenkichi's opening? I'm like, his Persona Awakening? I'm like, fuck off! The game's not out yet! Like, I don't care if it's a new game, if it was out a year ago in Japan, or if it's 20 years old. Like, and I know, I don't even blame YouTube, I blame the uploaders of that stuff. Like, for, like, the people whose channels, like, I cannot understand, like, how, like, creatively bankrupt those channels are that are like, I'm going to upload clips that will eventually be in people's recommendation feeds, and I'm going to upload them as soon as humanly possible. Like, I feel weird talking about spoilers for a game from 20 years ago, like, let alone, like, uploading, like, a video of something without, like, the chance of, like, it kind of ruining something for somebody. Like, the only case that, like, almost like falls into the rules are like those things that are just like the Darth Vaders or the Aeriths moments of like media and stuff, and even those now are almost like recontextualized. So like when I just like see those videos and stuff like that, and like you're gonna see that, you're gonna immediately like day one someone's gonna find, here's the Rhino boss fight in English fully dubbed 4 days before the retail release and stuff like that, or like, and like here's a compilation of every cutscene with the English voice actor of Dante and Nocturne. I'm like, oh my god.
Exactly, and and I'm thinking about it too. Yeah, a lot of people who make this kind of content, that's gonna be a big selling point too. It's like
it doesn't even matter if it's like a big kind of brand or not. Like even something that we all as fans universally hate. Us as fans with taste and are not in a coma, we all know that the Persona 5 anime is garbo. It's garbage.
Oh,
but if you look at YouTube, there are like anywhere from 30-second to 3-minute clips from that anime with millions of views just because it's the English dub. It's like people will watch anything.
It was I felt so conflicted because when I watched the clip, I was like, oh my gosh, is this almost... And then I had like a moment where I remembered like the horrible... And I was like, you know what? Not even going to go there. Not even the English dub can make me even think of watching this. But dang if it wasn't good.
Yeah, if you want to like turn it into like an anime like audiobook, that's probably the best way to experience that like animation. Just like feel free to like skip forward a couple of times. As a collector, exactly. I want to kind of ask you then a separate but similar thing with Nocturne. How like one of my big reasons I really hate the early edition with the digital deluxe stuff is there's no physical alternative. And then kind of going into that same point, like, if you want to have someone pay more money to play your game, go for it. Make that money however you want, baby. Like, do whatever you got to do. No judgment here. That stuff's fine. My whole thing is always make that available for everyone physically, though. Like, it doesn't cost you any more money to make a digital deluxe version with, like the stuff that's just available right then and there. Like, Microsoft has done that. Like, EA has done that. All the other big publishers do that. It's just Atlas is the only one in recent memory who's done it digitally only to play early, and there's no physical way to play it early outside of breaking embargo and stuff. Like, literally, I'm not even, like, trying to hide the fact. I want review codes for Atlas games now, so I can make content easier and for everyone to, like, digest, but because then I can just get it without feeling, like, shitty, because, like, I like having a physical copy, so why would I ever buy the deluxe version? Like, even, because, like, there are also then those people, like, we were talking about, Atlas wants it because if it's digital, you make the most money, entice people, but you and me both know people online and in real life who just do both. I'm going to buy the digital deluxe version and then the physical edition as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I do feel like that's a reason why Atlas just won't let go and like just have, you know, that physical version early too, because because I know people did that with Strikers as well, and I guess they really like that idea of people, you know, buying both versions, buying the digital one if they want to play it early, and then getting that steel book because they want to collect it. And it was funny because, like I had earlier said that I play games at my own pace usually, but even I was a little tempted to get the deluxe, like the digital version of Strikers.
Yeah, like, that wait was so long already. Like, those extra 5 days were not helping him.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just like, oh my gosh. But I was like, no, I can't justify doing this like twice just for that extra 5 days. Because once it goes, I realize now I have 2 copies of this game. So I had to hold back on that. But I think it feels like that's why Atlas doesn't want to let go, because they want people to double down on these copies, you know, feel tempted by it. So it sucks though, because I do agree with you. There should be a physical alternative to this stuff too, because there's a lot of people who would buy, like you said, pay a little more and buy the game physically so they can get it earlier.
Yeah. The problem has never been I don't want to pay it to play it early. I just don't want to pay it for digital early only. Also, exactly. as a collector, I cannot believe what a just sad release the Western version of Nocturne HD is. It is a $50 brown, yellow, sad, cold, refrigerated, old mustard-ass looking cover, and it has nothing special for physical. You know there's going to be no reversible manual. No, sorry, there's going to be no manual, no reversible cover, no pre-order bonus anywhere, unless you're that weird retailer in Spain who gets postcards, but that's a very small number of you. So, like, yeah, this one, like, really just feels like they are just doing the bare minimum to get this game out physically, which is, like, at the end of the day, it's great there's a physical option, but it's just, like, it also, like, doesn't do anything to kind of help that price tag argument of, like, for me, I'm just like, man, could you guys have just done something? Because, like, at least, like, the last time they've done so little with the release was, do you remember what they did for Strange Journey Redux?
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
So for anyone who isn't aware, they literally had no pre-order bonus, but at least, and they no joke, did this as if it was like a bonus. They said, guys, there's a poster with every copy. It's the reversible cover. It's the world's smallest, saddest poster of the new character none of you will like. And it was like, thanks, I guess? But it was just one of those things of like, whatever. Strange Journey Redux had its own problems, so that's fine. But like, even now, I would take a shitty, like, reversible, not poster over what will eventually just be like, because you bought a physical copy of Strikers on Switch, right?
Yeah.
How sad is that inside box?
I know it really is. I'm just like because I love steelbooks, so it was like I wish they had done more with this inside.
And also it just sucks because like Japan, obviously they get a lot more stuff. Like they had an amazing steelbook, but even for situations like in Japan, Nocturne has a great reversible cover. For Strikers, it's actually great. It's a little like tourist map of all of these spots in Japan they go to. So like when you're going to new areas, they
Yeah.
have those logos for like Osaka or Okinawa. They have all of those like things like behind it, like kind of like, hey, here's the map you're gonna go to in this game. Like just little stuff like that is really really nice.
It re- It is. It makes a big difference. And yeah, honestly, I think that's what bugged me the most about the physical version of Nocturne 2, that there was just no steelbook options. Like, that blew my mind. Like, that would have been, honestly, a good incentive to, like, price it at 50. Like, if you wanted to have the regular version for, like, 30, and then have the steelbook for, like, 50 or so, I would have gotten the steelbook. Like I know how I am. Like I love these things. So it's just crazy that they didn't even offer any options like that at all. It was just like, here's the standard physical version, like good luck. That was the most disappointing thing for me. And I was like, oh, and they could even added like little pins or something too. Like something just really cute and like and then I could justify the $50 price tag a little more.
So, do you remember when they did the Yakuza Kiwami steelbooks in America?
Yes, because I got that one. Ugh.
Do you remember what Yakuza Kiwami with the steelbook like cost at launch?
Oh man, you would think I would remember the price, and I don't. I just remember seeing the steelbook and just like hitting pay before I knew it happened.
Yakuza Kiwami was, if I'm not mistaken, Yakuza Kiwami I think was $30 at retail with the steelbook. So a fully remade in a new engine game,
Mhm.
and then just being like, nope, sorry. In like 3 years from now, we will we will instead charge more for less money.
I know that's it's such a shame too. Honestly, it's just like like I still do love the fact that more people can have access, to this game, and that makes me very happy, and that they, did certain things with the game, to touch it up. But it's like, yeah, like I really wish they had just put more into these like physical versions, or more into like touching up frame rate and things like that, just to make it like really really definitive. Even just stuff like, because I don't know if I'd want like a full-on remake, and I don't think none of us did, because what makes Nocturne, I feel like, is how the graphics are stylized. Like, it just works for that game.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like there were just so many like avenues they could have took instead to touch it up in other ways to really make it feel like, hey, this is a very beloved game, and we want to make sure that newcomers get the absolute best version of it they can.
Do you think a lot of newcomers, like whether it just be people who have only played Persona 5 or even people who've just never touched any, like what do you think the actual chances of people seeing this game in stores? Hopefully they're colorblind, so they're not offended by the terrible color choice of the cover, and
Yeah.
we'll look at it and go, I'll try this, because like I think unless you're like in the know, I feel like looking at Nocturne's box art is kind of a hard sell because it literally tells you nothing.
Yeah, honestly, I do feel like it's weird because, yeah, I do feel like there's nothing that would particularly like capture your eye if you were to see it like in stores, like you said, unless you're already in the know about it.
I
So
know it is
that's a
way
problem.
too late to do this, but I think even if they had just done like the more simple option of use that original PS2 cover of the Maniacs Plus edition of with like
Yeah.
Raito like using his sword and Demi-Fiend holding it and there's got like some blood on his hand there. I think at least that gives you more of a thing of like, okay, there's a lot of weird tones going on here, but at least like this shows like there's something happening here. There's demons, there's swords, there's men from different time periods or whatever.
Yeah, like it's more dynamic, So I agree with that. I feel like action stuff. Yeah.
I have a very depressing statement that I hope is wrong, but I don't think it is. I think unless you are someone who listens to a podcast like this or Mega 10 Marathon, I think the name Shin Megami Tensei, even in like 2021 on the eve of SMT5 coming out eventually, I think it has been so long since a tentpole release that to a like average consumer, SMT does not mean anything. You don't need, because obviously you don't even associate with Persona anymore because Persona got rid of it, even though they are still connected.
Yeah, that I know that does make you sad when you think about it. It's.
I'm always in the camp of I will
really
never
depressing.
understand why they got rid of it in Persona. It's like you guys already have like bonkers ass titles. Like you could have just kept it going forever.
Yeah, honestly, it was a very weird choice. I don't really get that either, especially because it is. I mean, I know that as it went along, the connection got a bit more tenuous. Like,
listen, we're in a series
comparing
where
story.
something like Demi Kids, Jack Bros, and Persona 5 are all somehow connected. The series should have no timeline, no connections, no nothing. It's fucking bonkers ass bonkers.
It's true. And I do agree. I wish they had kept that tie-in because I think it would have helped with the brand recognition for the flagship series, especially as Persona has skyrocketed in popularity. Because like you said, then that would carry on to stuff like this. Because they'd be like, oh, cool, like, it's another Shin Megami Tensei game. That's awesome. So, yeah, it's something that I feel like in retrospect, would have helped out a lot with these kind of games.
Mm-hmm. So I have got to start winding us down, because I'm just now starting to think of more dumb ways to bring it back. Like, imagine if more people remember that before SMT was SMT in the West. I feel like no one talks about this enough. Why do we never talk about why Revelations stopped? Like, who was the person who eventually, after Persona 1, was like, we gotta stop calling it this, guys. Revelations is not working for us.
I know, right?
That there was some poor bastard when Jack Bros was coming out on the Virtual Boy that was like, guys, I think it would sell better if we called it Revelations Jack Bros. It's like, get out of here. We're already making 5.
Exactly.
We're already making 5 of these. That's 6 too many. We got to get this thing out of here.
That was it. That was over the line.
Oh my god. But yeah, so thank you so much for coming on, talking, and I hope that this was more than just me complaining about Nocturne, but I hope people kind of got a little bit of a perspective into not only the game and where we're sort of at with the preview cycle, but also for you in terms of getting to talk about it. If anyone is interested, though, the last episode of your guys' podcast, the Mega 10 Marathon, you guys did talk all about Nocturne, though.
Yeah, we did actually. So so thank you for bringing that up, and I think that is a good way if you want to kind of find out more about the game itself, like the lore, and kind of like what it was like playing this on the PS2. So yeah, definitely. And it was honestly a lot of fun chatting with you about this. Like, I'm still enjoying the HD remaster a lot. But I do think there's a lot of like nuance, there's a lot of complexity to this whole topic as well, and it was really nice exploring that today.
Yeah, I'm really excited once like a lot more people kind of start getting their hands on the full game, and when embargoes are up and stuff, it'll be really interesting kind of diving a little bit more deep than maybe even like something like Review can kind of get to, that of just like, let's really dive deep in terms of like, okay, this is what's new, but should this, like, was this the right choice? How about this? And we even have the extra context that Japan doesn't really get as much of like, Raito is a new thing for all of us, where in Japan it was old. And also we have the voice acting to talk about, comparing each of the versions. So I'm really, really excited to talk to you and a whole bunch of other more people about this. And I'm definitely not emailing everyone and anyone at Atlas West to try and get a code, even though I know that they probably don't like us, but that's okay. They haven't said they don't like me, so until they tell me to stop email, I'm going to just be honest with all of you guys. I want you all to know that my last email to Atlas West PR, I literally at the end included, hey, if if you guys want me to stop asking, if you just tell me, I will stop sending 19 emails a week asking for any help at all. So that's where we're at right now. They probably think I'm some sad terrorist man in Kansas who just is looking for free game codes. I'm just trying to help. I don't want to complain all the time. I'm just trying to give y'all my best feedback possible. I don't work for the gaming choo-choo-choo gamers, not yet. I do find it funny, though, sometimes, of like, I bet you 1,000% that I would have an infinitely easier time getting coverage for games if it was just I was at a regular ass outlet, no matter the size. I think it is literally just because of like who like SMTN is as a podcast, of like they know we're gonna talk about it either way. They know we're gonna do whatever we're gonna do. They know where the opinion kind of is for it. And it's so funny. Like I was joking about it with Cam, R.I.P. From DualShockers, not anymore. Cam was like looking at all my friends playing Nocturne, and I replied to him very honestly. I was like, motherfucker, look at me. What am I gonna cover? What do they think? What do they think I'm gonna hold over this game in terms of coverage? I'm like, I'm literally only covering your series. This seems like, okay, let's send him the one code and then we don't have to talk to him for like 9 more months.
It's like a little bribe. It's like, here, go away.
Throw me a bone, guys. Give me some terrible sponsored video or whatever to like sell my soul out to. You want me to talk about mattresses? I'll talk about mattresses.
Exactly. I'll talk about ExpressVPN.
I cannot tell you enough how much I love playing DX2. It's my favorite mobile game. I promise I don't hate gotchas.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. Where can people find you online so I can stop trying to rush you out of here, which I feel very bad about?
No, not at all. So, you can find me, of course, Gamepur. I write for that site now. You can find me on the co-hosting Megaton Marathon podcast. I guest on Combo Chain, which is a more general JRPG podcast. So I have some episodes with that. You can also find me on Twitter. My ad is ajames347. Definitely feel free to just chat with me about anything Megaton related or really anything JRPG related. Like, I love nothing more than to talk about this stuff, so.
If you want to bully her about why she has not pre-ordered the collector's edition of Tales of Arise, please send her as many direct messages as possible, everybody. We need to get the answers to these hard questions. Alright, everybody, I am such a terrible host that immediately upon finishing part 1 of this podcast, decided to immediately beg my guest to come back on and we can have a proper part 2 of this podcast, which, like, it's kind of funny. Like, I did something similar to this with a episode before this of, like, we had, like, no news at all, and it was literally, like, half talking about the PlayStation Store, and then, like, another hour and a half was just, like, gabbing about, like, Infinity Train stuff. So at least this would be a supersized episode that's actually on topic for once.
So you're just fine. Like, I'm happy to be back again. This is a total blast.
Thank you. And yes, but I'm just gonna put this out there. If you do want to talk about Infinity Train, I won't cut that down. I'll give that a chance to shine if you feel strongly about that show or not.
Oh my gosh, I do actually. I just watched the finale, so yes.
I had a very off topic, but I have to throw this out there. I had a great moment after I talked with Ozzy a couple episodes ago about us. We just gushed about the whole show. And one of the things that came up, I mentioned to my wife, and I was like, what was funny is, like, the amount of boy love stuff, like, the amount of BL things I've seen online with Ryan and Min now after season 4 is done. And she was like, really? And I'm like, honey, imagine watching that show and tell me there's no way these two dudes on the train did not hiccup at all, or had any, like, the sexual tension was palpable.
It really was.
Kez is literally just there to be the camera woman. She's like the one who's behind the scenes being like, come on, just lean in, give him a little kiss, he's fine.
Oh my god. That's a perfect way to put it.
That's like, I always think it's funny, and you know what, why not just start this talking about porn, but like, I always thought, even as a kid, I thought it was like the funnest or funniest job ever when you're just the dude who has to talk like nothing's going on, like the guy behind the camera in a porno or a girl. Because for the longest time, you always have that stereotype of, oh, it's just some like gross dude or whatever, like talking behind the camera. And I'll never forget like the first time a friend of mine sent me something of like, it was like gay porn, but like it was a girl behind the camera, and she was like, "You guys are beautiful. You're doing great. Touch his hair. He likes his hair there, doesn't he?" And it was just so funny. Like, for like a guy, you just like, it's just like usually sleazeball energy. Like, yeah, honey, you like that, don't you? But like the girl, she's just having a good time. She's just having like, hey, I'm just watching my two guy friends have some fun guy times together. I'm just enjoying the moment.
That is awesome.
Speaking of things that have a lot of very, very not subtle homosexual energy, Nocturne HD, what do you think the vibes are gonna be when that dub comes out? Are people gonna be like, man, I'm thirsting after? I'm trying to think who, like, because I'm actually looking at the English voice casting list. It's one of those funny things of like, I don't. Because, like, there's, with almost any, like, kind of, like, English dub, there's always, like, that one character that kind of, like, stands out almost more than they should. Like, I think in actuality, the people who made Persona 5 probably didn't think people would be as thirsty for Akechi as he is as a character.
I know!
So, like, I'm just wondering, like, is it going to be Goto? Like, is Ray Chase just going to be, like, the new, like, thirst bait, like, as, like, the cat this time? Like, what's gonna happen?
And I'm so mad because honestly, like, his voice is the standout voice, and it's for a cat. It's like, like, I love your voice.
So
I can't thirst for this.
I got a weird like voiceover question that I haven't seen a lot of. How much like actual voicing is there for the demons? Like, is it pretty like light, or is it like more than you have seen like in the last couple of games?
So, you know, in battle and whatnot, it's the same. Outside of battle, like the major scenes, and I know right now I can't talk too much about some of the later ones because, you know, the cutoff, but in general, like, you know, those major cutscenes with like important demons, those are all voiced.
Okay.
You know, so it's actually pretty cool, like, hearing some of the demons' voices, and that'll be something that, you know, I can't wait for you to hear as well. Like, certain, like, you know, iconic scenes. It's like, oh wow, that's actually pretty cool. Like, you know.
I am very curious how they're gonna handle the Black Frost scene.
Yeah, definitely.
So with the voice cast and stuff for it, we were mentioning like Ray Chase a little bit earlier. Do you have any other kind of like standouts that either surprised you were maybe nervous about, or like not kind of like too sure with it? Because like, even though like we've pretty much only seen the opening, you do see a large amount of the cast, at least in terms of the human cast in the beginning.
Yeah, that's true. Let me think. Okay, I think it's also because, like, Demi-Fiend doesn't talk very much. So when I actually heard his voice in, like, the trailer that trailer they had recently with, you know, showing, like, the reasons for the, yeah, like, just hearing his voice was like, oh, wow. That's actually really cool.
Did you know, did you know the director of the voice dub, Christian LaMonta, is also Demi-Fiend?
Oh, okay. That makes sense that he's the voice director. That's pretty cool, actually.
So, like, fun behind the scenes, I've, like, actually known the voice cast for this game since, like, last year. And what was funny about it was I tried getting Christian on this show under the veil because he also he did the voiceover directing of 13 Sentinels.
Oh, okay.
And I wanted to get him on the show thinking, okay, if I get him in for 13 Sentinels, I can maybe talk about Nocturne or, like, see whatever comes up. Because, like, I know the dub for Nocturne's been done forever. Yeah. And it was just so funny of, like, I thought 13 Sentinels, no big deal. Like, there's, like, not really that much, like, press or interviews about it. Could not get anything off the gate. Like, Atlas West just does not want to give anyone who's not GameSpot or any of the big boys any interview time. And it was just so funny of, like, nothing is more heartbreaking. Like, I don't know how many interviews you've ever done. Nothing is more heartbreaking when you contact the guest, the guest is like, let's go. I'd love to talk about this project. I'm super passionate. I just got to go through the company behind it and see if they're okay with it. And then you just never hear anything from it again. It breaks my heart.
That sounds really awful. Look, I'm actually very fortunate that usually when I get interviews, it's either like part of like a preview thing, or it's a PR or the studio, whatever, reaching out. So at that point, everything's already worked out. So I already know who I'm going to speak to. So I've been really lucky, because that sounds devastating. I can't imagine like being stoked for an interview and then you just like, and then there's nothing. That sucks.
I was just talking about it with a friend of mine, and I was like, you know what I think my problem is of why Atlas West hates me? It's like, I think it's because they know I want it too bad. I'm too clingy. It scares them off.
I don't think so. I think I was thinking about what you said before, and it's probably like it would be a lot easier if you did decide to work for a publication.
It would. It really is like I need to just go to the Railroad Express Gamer Factory.com and just be like, let me be your temp writer. I write one byline a month and let's see the difference. Let's see what happens.
Exactly.
I'll like it would be the thing of like, just pretend I'm a different outlet. I'll give myself a new Gmail address and turn my name into John Smith, and then watch I get like a Nocturne code in 2 hours.
Oh no! Don't say that.
I want you to know, between last episode and this episode recording, I've now put in 6 different requests through different agencies for a code for this game.
Oh no!
I'm now at the point where I bet you, if anyone cared enough to look, they're gonna first think, is he just trying to scam for free codes?
God.
I'm like, I'm covering my bases. I'm just trying to cover my bases here.
I mean, definitely good luck to you, because you definitely deserve a code. Like, the passion, and knowledge you bring to the franchise as a whole is just impeccable, honestly. So
you are too kind to me. That's why they give you and all the other media people out there the big shots. But again, like I joked about you, that's why I joked about yesterday. They know no matter how little or much attention they give me, that I'll be forced to talk about them anyway every week.
Oh man, I hope that's not the reason. That's messed up.
No, one of the things I do want to tell you, this one was like one that like actually really hurt. I like tracked down the devs who made Catherine Full Body, the Switch port. It's super duper small company in Japan, and like I found them through their Facebook page. They have literally 13 people who like them on Facebook, and I sent them it was like a super cold call. I'd sent them an email as well, but it was just like, with my half-assed like Japanese, I sent something out there. Just be like, it'd be cool to talk to them, see what the port process was like, because like Atlas like basically contracts out so much work these days for these ports. I'd love to like know just like anything about that process, and especially Catherine. Catherine's really interesting. That Switch port was made by like 8 people. It was super small. And I messaged them, and they replied really fast. And they were like, oh, my God, we'd love to. You just got to, like, ask Atlas. This would be so great. Because like, you could tell they've never had anyone reach out to them for an interview. They were as excited about this as I was. They were like, oh, baby, let's go. And I'm like, this is fantastic. And it was immediately, I got a reply for it, which that almost makes it worse. I got a reply from it. From PR McPR person for anonymity, and he was like, so what's the point of the interview? And I was like, I just want to talk about like what it was like working on Catherine. And I'm, all right, I don't think we can do that. It's like, I was like, why? They're like, it just doesn't seem like the right time. And I'm like, I know it's November and the game came out in July, but I'm like, I'm sure like talking about the game wouldn't like hurt it.
It really wouldn't. Like, come on, that would have been so much fun, and those people who worked on it were clearly excited for
I
this.
know. Yeah, that was one of the things of like I didn't feel bad in that sense. Like for like, oh man, it sucks I couldn't do a thing about it. It was more of like, man, they seemed as excited to talk about it as possible. 'Cause, like, why wouldn't you? Like it'd be like they all probably like have a huge passion about that. Like it's a super small company, and it just would have been like a fun. It just would have been like one of those fun things of it. I've now like gotten to the point where I can't ask people to like come on for the reasons I want them to come on. I just gotta ask them as like, hey, I want to talk to you as a person or as a company. I don't want to talk to you about any specific project, and then just basically get the wrap on them at the time. Because I think you're more likely in an interview to like kind of ease people into talking about stuff, as opposed to like what you were mentioning when you're at a preview. Like say like you're at a preview for X game or Y game. They're going to talk about just that. They're not going to want to talk about other stuff. So it's a lot easier to kind of cover different things.
Yeah, no, that's actually true. Yeah, you do have to sort of present things, especially when you're pitching like interviews. You do have to present in certain ways, and then kind of hope that you're able to sort of meander into other topics as well. The key is too, you do. I noticed you, unless like the interview selling point is that it's supposed to be just like a general talk thing, like you do have to make sure that you stay on whatever topic you initially pitched, because if you pitch the topic and that's what got approved through the channels, and then you start like going completely, off the cuff, like that's gonna cause issues.
It's like I don't know, like some of those like are like my like I feel like for PR, yeah, like those are the interviews like they probably like hate the most, but it's like those are like always like the most fun ones though, of like those like weird times of like when someone would interview like Yoko Taro or like Kojima or something and be like, so Kojima was talking about Captain Marvel, but he was saying Mads Mikkelsen's really fucking hyped for some reason. You're like, oh, okay, let's talk about let's talk about that. Let's go with that angle instead.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think those are some of the most like fun in terms of interviews. So I definitely get you.
It's like every game developer just needs to have like the Sakurai blog and Famitsu where they can just like talk about whatever they want, and then everyone online can just kind of like dissect what that means for like the rest of the month.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I actually really love that kind of stuff. Like it's so much fun. It's kind of why I like I don't the website 4Gamer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like a lot of the interviews that they do as well, because like similar to Famitsu, 4Gamer interviews usually cover like an extremely wide variety of topics. So you just go in there, translate, parse through, and you've got like 20 different stories like going on in there.
4Gamers interviews to me always give me the vibe of like, this is what I would expect to be like on a developer's blog, like for like I feel like this is very rare these days, but like even when like Studio Zero got announced a couple years ago, they were doing like blog posts every now and then, be like, it's movie night, here's what we like for movies, like stuff like that. I just eat that up and whatnot. But at the same time though, like it's probably like a mixture of, okay, why should we do this, on top of like who's it really for, and like who, like there has to like kind of be that person there with the interest to do it. Like that's why I've always like joked with people, like if I ever got a job at Sega and Atlas, I would make it my job to keep doing this podcast as like the official thing, because why not? What is stopping anyone at Atlas from doing their own podcast? If you guys can live stream like 5 times a week, like I'm sure people would love like an actually official talk to your fans like Atlas podcast.
I agree, because even like I believe it was the voice of the English voice of Morgana, when she was doing those little casual like talks with her with her with
all the voice actors leading into Strikers.
Exactly, like from the comforts of their homes, and that was really cool. Like it was such a nice casual thing. It was very different, and like a lot of people ate that up too, because of like you're just literally watching like these friends like have this fun back and forth, and even though the it was kind of meant to promote Strikers, they were able to just talk about like all sorts of things relating to like their roles in general, the characters, like the plot, like it was. So I really love stuff like that, and I would love a sort of podcast version, like you said, that's like when it's directly for the fans. Like that's such a cool idea.
I hope that you can be honest with me. I hope you know that at this point you can be unfiltered. Don't. If I am being a entitled, self-centered media person asshole, I want you to be very honest and tell me. The more I have covered games and entertainment in this kind of like role of it, like I've been doing this since like 2012 in various different aspects.
Mhm.
The longer I get into this, the less I ever want to talk to a voice actor about fucking voice acting. I think that is some of the most boring interview stuff possible. Like, what really sunk it into me of, like, this is just the most boilerplate, like, PR garbage was that Stryker's launch party interview, which, like, really sucked because I loved everyone involved. Like, PCB worked on it, even though it was basically just, like, a glorified Zoom call. But the entire video, like, I don't know if you watched that live stream, but, like, they even, like, have clipped it out and put it on Twitter every now and then. It was just, guys, working from home is tough, but I love playing Yusuke. And let me tell you all the fun about being Morgana in my closet. Oh my god. Like, I don't want to hear about any of that. Like, you can talk about, like, what the character means to you. Like, obviously, talk about whatever you want. But, like, for me, that's why, like, I always find it funny. Like, whenever, like, did you ever, like, go to any anime conventions? I mean, like, obviously not recently, but, like, back in the day, like, would you ever go to conventions and stuff?
Funny enough, my first anime convention, because I usually go to New York City Comic Con, which is, you know, that, like, overall sort of one.
Big boy convention.
Exactly. I've been, oh my god, until COVID happened, I think I went for, like, 10 years straight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then recently I started going to Anime NYC as well, so, like, you know, that specifically, you know, was just for anime, and got to meet VAs that way as well.
So, like, I love how, like, anything, like, any sort of convention, whether it be a normal comic convention, a game convention, or, like, an anime convention, I always love, like, seeing all the different guests and stuff there, but it always boggles my mind, like, how a lot of fans kind of, like, treat, if you're, like, you're a big fan of, like, X or Y voice actor, like, whether it be someone like Laura Bailey or Matthew Mercer or whatever, 9 out of 10 fans I feel like are all kind of the same thing of like, oh my god, I want them to sign like this random game cover they're on and move on, or be like, oh my god, I love you, or like if you ever go to any of their panels, a lot of their questions are like, what's it like being a voice actor? Like, oh man, if I ever have to hear another like genuine question of like, how do I become a voice actor? It's like, there are so, like, you waited your whole life to ask something you could literally Google someone, and I'm sure they've answered a million times, but like, I guess I always like enjoy trying to like to delve a little bit deeper. Like, the closest I've ever come to like just having a fan moment from a panel was a couple years back. I totally am bombing on their names, but the two actors who were John Marston and Arthur from Red Dead 2.
Right.
I remember I wanted to talk to them about, and also cover your ears if you care about Red Dead spoilers for like 3 years later. I wanted to talk to them about their ending for both of their characters, because it's such a personal moment of like that scene for them, and like kind of talk about like what that was like, because like, man, I'm such a baby and totally crying in that game, and I like wanted to like, and like it was like I wanted to thank them for like how good of a job they fucking did in that performance in terms of everything, but also like what that's like, because like, man, there are those moments when you're like, playing games where you're like, man, this guy wasn't just acting, he or she put their fucking gut into that performance, and like they just really kill it.
Oh man, that's always like the best. Yeah, but yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Like, I think my favorite stuff is just when I get to hear like a nice, like, a wide variety of topics. I love too when I get to hear with a VA when they talk about their characters in depth, like, you know, kind of how they feel about the character, certain interpretations of like maybe their actions or dialogues or things like that, like, and just like a lot of other little things too, like even if it's stuff like just kind of from like the mundane to the more in depth, like you said, like I actually like that as well. Like if there was a particularly difficult scene for them to voice, like what was that like for them at that moment? But then I literally just like them, you know, listening to them shoot the breeze. Like, you know, I like a variety. I think it's very boring when you do pigeonhole like VAs into that one thing of like, Oh, what was it like voicing this character? Like, how, like you said, or how did you get into voice work? Or, just really simple things that's just kind of like, once it's answered, it's like, okay, that's it. Like, come on. Like, you have these, like, fun, lively, like, people who have so much to say about so many things. It's like, dig in, get creative. Like, I want to hear something unique. So I totally agree with you on that. Like, if that makes me a jerk too, then we can be jerks together.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's like, it goes back to it. It has nothing to do with like not wanting to like hear them or like talk about the other things. I just think it's very apparent, at least to me, when you're listening to a voice actor sell a game as opposed to talking about working on a game. Like, I think a voice actor is a terrible person to sell me on a game of, like, I am one element of, like, honestly, like, I'd rather hear about the guy who had to QA a game for 3 hours talk about his workday than something like that.
I agree, yeah. Because if I'm going to hear about someone selling a game, I like to hear it from the people who, who were actually doing things like coding it and, like, really digging into that game. Because that's when you can get some really good, in-depth information, like some real juicy stuff. But yeah, like if you say like a VA, of course they count as devs too. They're very involved in the process, and I would never take that away.
Yeah, it's a very different like ballpark. That's why like, and this one I know I'm definitely being an entitled asshole for, but I've had that conversation before. No, this is a different thing of like, I separate like from the creative dev side to the like actor side in the same way like. If you talk, like, when I talk to people at Atlus in a PR sense or a marketing sense, I don't really consider them as, oh my god, they helped make the game. Like, they're all a process. It's all a team effort. But, like, I, like, kind of, like, hold it in separate regards. Like, I would never want, like, to get a good example is, like, let's say if Matthew Mercer was right in front of me. If I had Matthew Mercer in front of me and I had a copy of Persona 5 Strikers... dude, I don't really need you to sign it. Like, yeah, you're in the game, but, like, I don't really, like, tie it like that. Where it'd be like, oh my god, dude, like, I had, like, a good example is, like, I'm even, like, this, like, specific for it. Like, I wouldn't want, like, the musician who wrote the game to sign my game. I'd be like, no. Like, I want him to, like, sign the soundtrack. Like, I want, like, the writers or, like, the directors or, like, the people who were, like, coding or, like, producers. Like, that's something, like, I would want on the game. Like, I literally think I have, like, maybe 2 or 3 games before this. But, like, that kind of goes back to the anime convention thing of it always boggles my mind when you'd be like, oh my god, I want Ray Chase to sign my copy of Final Fantasy 15. I'm like, Ray Chase is literally one of thousands of people who worked on that game. But if you want his signature to take up 90% of the box, you go for it, dude. It's your copy.
Yeah, like, no, I get what you mean. Like, because it is still, like, a division. Like, you put everyone together as people who contributed to the making of a game, but everyone still has different roles to play in that. So, yeah, like, it makes sense to have, like, certain divisions and what you want signed. I just think it's a matter, too, like, unless a dev is, like, super big, chances are you're never gonna get a signature from them. Like,
one day, Hideo Kojima will sign all 9,000 items I have for him. He will be very, very excited to see me and probably hate me. But like, also, it's another one of those things that it's definitely like knowledge is a curse. Cause like I don't blame people who want to get those things signed. It's because like literally I've been there. Like when you're not like following the production of how these games are made, you know 2 things. I like this game, and this person is a character I like from this game I like. Like in their brain, no 90% of fans who play games or even watch movies. Like, no one's thinking, like, what was the creative director doing in this game? They're like a great example is, take an Avengers movie. Like, even something as big as an Avengers. The Russo brothers will never be as popular as Tony Stark or Chris Evans. And there's just that divide there. It's just like, even though they are all super huge parts involved in everything for it, because at the end of the day, you're looking at that face or that voice, the people behind the scenes kind of get like the brunt of the shaft, sadly.
Yeah, like I feel like, once again, you really have to be a certain kind of director to get to that level of stardom, like, Steven Spielberg or Quentin Tarantino, where at that point now it's like your name is just as big as any of those actors on there. Like, people will seek out movies because you directed that movie, and that's extremely rare and difficult to get, so I think I definitely agree with you. For the most part, the vast majority of the people who work creatively on any of these kind of projects, they're just not going to ever reach that same level of stardom as like the people, the actors themselves. It's just, it's unfortunate, but it's what it is.
It's like the only kind of recent example I can think of where people know probably the director more than the main person is, did you see Tenet ever?
Tenet? No, I haven't.
So Tenet, it's a Christopher Nolan movie, even though Christopher Nolan is nowhere in that movie. Whereas the main guy, John David Washington, fucking amazing actor, does a great job in it. He's a killer lead. Nobody probably walked out of that movie going, John David Washington, my man, he killed it.
Yeah.
People are like, that was a good Christopher Nolan movie. Like, that so rarely happens. Question I do want to ask you, though, that I'm curious about, and kind of gets into the topic of this. Did you follow much of the interviews for Nocturne, by the way, kind of leading up to the Japanese release? I'm expecting, 0 interviews for the Western one, but just because they don't really have a lot of, main creative people still left there, Like, a lot of the people who make Nocturne just aren't at Atlus anymore, which is sad, but true.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, honestly, I think other than sort of a cursory interest in it, I didn't follow those interviews in depth, and I realize that. I think because I have this tendency, when I see, I get so much of an information load, so I kind of just, scan things for something really juicy, and then it's if it doesn't pique my interest in particular, I'll just kind of move on. That sounds terrible, I realize it.
No, I get it. And also, as someone who read almost all the interviews for Nocturne HD, they were so boring. They were just very boilerplate. Also, they kind of make it seem like they worked on this game for, eons. According to Atlus, they worked on the game for over 3 years and had to go in, and I think they messed around with something like 10,000 textures and stuff. You don't really get I worked on this game for 3 years vibe. You definitely, at least for me, I get a... do you remember that era where they were doing a lot of PS2 HD collections on PS3? That's what Nocturne HD gives me vibes of. You did a lot, but you definitely didn't make it enough to oh my god, this is a totally different game.
Yeah, definitely not. It's, they touched up on a lot, but it is absolutely not a different game. I feel like if you even went back to the PS2 version, which I did, and you're kind of oh, okay, so I could see where they touched up here and here and here, but it's it's definitely not completely from the ground up. Nothing near that, yeah.
I wonder, kind of playing the what if scenario. If you were making, you're the one in charge, you have an endless budget, but you have to make a new version of Nocturne. You can do HD, you can do remake, you can do however you want. It's 2021. You know what systems are out here. How do you make a Nocturne HD? What do you think it takes to make a way for either people to jump back in and newcomers alike to finally try this game?
That's a really good question, because when we were talking briefly about it last time, I was really thinking about what I would do. It sounds pretty simple for me to go, oh, I would do a full-on remake, but I'm kind of do I really want to do that? And I don't. I know this sounds weird, but for me, a lot of the charm, even now with Nocturne, is just its visual style. I feel like that style is so important, in the presentation. It's really important to the atmosphere and kind of the mood and tone and of the game. And I feel like it really contributes to all that, in terms of the story and the characters and everything being perceived. So I think I would probably touch it up more than what this current remaster has done. Really clean up textures and things like that, and also definitely really dig in and improve on the frame rate. Even if you have to, recode certain things, I think I would definitely invest in that as well. But I wouldn't want to Oh, and then I'd probably also do like, because I don't know why I'm a big fan of this. I'd probably have like a full on like voiced game, so like everything is voiced.
I feel
Because
like
I've
with
been getting
I feel like with RPGs, it's like I know that's a big ask, but the
yeah.
longer and the more things are voiced in games, the weirder it is, and the more it stands out when they're not. You know?
Exactly. And I think with games like, for instance, Fire Emblem Three Houses, when every single line is voiced, and like that took so much effort because the VAs talk about it all the time. Like they literally were doing like thousands and thousands of lines, for this game. But it stands out when you play it. It's like it really does make a huge difference in terms of like the quality, and like you said, like not having jarring moments where certain sections are voiced and other sections aren't, when everything is voiced. So I'd probably do that. I would probably add in more demons. I think that's a big thing too, because I love that the demons have like fun, cool, like their own little animations and everything. Um, but I would definitely put in more demons, vary them more, because one thing that kind of drives me nuts is that there's a lot of palette swaps. Of the
Oh my
demons
god, yeah,
and
especially because like I mean, obviously this series is known for just doing palette swaps, but Nocturne has such a small like number of demons because it was their first 3D one like that. So yeah, like they were
yeah,
going to cut as many corners as they could back then, and it's so odd that like it would have been so easy. And one of the big things
yeah,
I'd always kind of hoped for when they announced this, I'm like, guys, all of their PS2 games run on the same engine. Like, there's nothing stopping them from just dragging in models from DDS or like,
yeah,
imagine how cool it would have been if they did like even something as small as this of like, you know how everyone hates it, but it's such a cool secret boss fight. The secret boss fight of Demi-Fiend and DDS is super super nostalgic for just being a
right.
balls crushingly hard, but how cool would it have been to then have a secret boss fight in Nocturne HD that has you fight the main cast of DDS?
That would have been so cool, like as a really cool like tie-in, since and it's so easy to do because once again the Mala Network stuff, like that, yeah, like stuff like that. Like I think that's what I would have focused on the most, like adding in complete voice acting, adding in more demons, adding in just more content, like secret bosses, maybe like more dungeons, like optional ones, like
Well,
just like, and
there
then
are new dungeons, but they are DLC, sadly.
yeah, exactly. But you're within the game. Because I was actually gonna say that next. Like, I'm one of those people. Like, I'm not. I would have probably just been nice about it and taken all the stuff that's being sold as DLC and just put it in the game and like add more. You know what I mean? So like, then at least if you're charging like 50 for it, it's like, well, there's a lot of content in here for $50, so it makes sense. So it's like, that's kind of how I would tackle it. Like, I don't want to change up the visuals so much because I feel like they're so important to the game. But I think, like, it would never hurt to have more content. So, like, newcomers have tons to play with. Old, veterans could come to this game and they'll have even more to explore than they did before. Like, what could be better?
Yeah. We were kind of talking about that like similarly, but like going back to the voice acting, like it's great that Nocturne's voiced. Nocturne, there are large sections of that game without voice acting though. Like especially like, and I know we can't really get into this with the preview stuff, but like there's a good like in that middle third part where like the cutscenes are not evenly distributed through the whole playthrough, which I think anyone who's played the game can know that. And so it's like
Yeah.
something like Nocturne is very odd of like why would you not voice all of this? Just because like there's so much like for something where like it's Persona 5, you kind of get it. It's a really long game, and as we mentioned, like Nocturne you can beat in under 50 hours. Like Nocturne is not impossibly long, and it doesn't have like a crazy like diverse cast. Like
Yeah.
a lot of the people who make demon noises are doing multiple like demons with the same voice.
That's true.
Like one of the things like I always notice, especially just because of how much godforsaken Persona 5 I digested over the last year, is there's like a dude, I forget the actor's name, who does like every older than teenage voice guy in Persona 5's world, and it's like he barely makes any difference, and every time I hear him, I'm like, God, they just got it was like, okay, we're gonna have 4 extras play everyone in the entire game who's not named.
Yeah, pretty much. So like, we're gonna cut this budget as close as possible.
But like going back to like other games, like something like Tokyo Mirage Sessions, I love that everything's voiced. Like Tokyo Mirage Sessions, there's not a single like part of that game's story. And also, when we're saying not everything has to like be text, I mean stuff like obviously menus, obviously something like a side quest or whatever. But like everything that involves the main story, you want to kind of hopefully feel as cinematic as possible. And like those moments just like help out a whole lot. It's always like one of those things I always really loved about Danganronpa. Of like, imagine, I'm assuming you've played. Have you played Danganronpa before?
Yes, I have actually. I actually reviewed at all, but I think the 3rd game. But I reviewed the first 2. I reviewed the spin-off, Super Despair Girls. So yeah,
Ultra Despair Girls. We can't throw you under the bus of Super. Although I'm sure if they port it one day, it'll be called Super Despair Girls.
I know, right?
Imagine how lackluster Danganronpa would be if the trials were not voiced.
Exactly, it wouldn't have that same impact of being able to hear like the emotion behind these characters, like it really adds to like the tenseness, like sometimes the horror, just a lot of the emotional portions are really like punched up because of the voices. I totally agree.
Mm-hmm. And that was a PSP game, guys. You got no excuse.
Yeah, wait, was it? Oh, I guess it was.
Yeah, 1 and 2 had as much voice acting as the Vita version, which is insane to think about.
That is.
Another thing I wanted to kind of throw up in terms of crazy ideas that I wanted originally when I heard about this, even though I know in retrospect would never happen. I thought originally when they were talking about doing a lot more HD stuff, I was like, just do 3 duologies, and it would be amazing. Start with Nocturne, because obviously it's the most, like, it's the oldest one out there, and it's definitely got, like, an easier sell without having a lot of baggage. I will say, I don't know why they added 3. Like, obviously the title is Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne in Japan. I always kind of liked how they got rid of 3 and just called it Nocturne, because it's like, we don't call Strange Journey 3.5, even though it was basically SMT4.
Yeah, exactly.
And this goes back to our conversation about like who's gonna look at that cover of Demi Fiend's PP yellow face and go, I'm buying that for $50. The 3 then just kind of like goes, oh well, I haven't played 1 or 2, which you can't do anywhere legally. So why would you put the 3 there?
I know, that's what bugs me. It's like, you didn't even make 1 and 2 available. Why put the 3? You're like just teasing us. And like you said, it is going to cause a weird confusion because, people would be like, wait, where's 1 and 2 then? And then it's like, well.
Oh man, speaking of interviews that will actually thankfully happen at one point, because this person has nothing to do with Atlus, I found the guy who was the graphic designer on Nocturne back in the day at Atlus, and I'm trying to get him on. He's like a CEO of this company I'm totally forgetting the name of. They're working on the new Phantom Breaker fighting game. I think their name is like Rocket Panda, and the CEO was the original graphic designer for Nocturne. And it was funny, he did like a big tweet I think a month or so ago when the HD release date came out, because everyone was talking about Nocturne again. And I just reached out to him because I have a degree in graphic design and would love to just talk to anyone who was like working on it back then. But like all of that stuff was on purpose. Like if you look at the old logo for Nocturne and the new logo, what's one of the biggest differentiators besides the fact that there's no 3?
Let me see, actually, because of course now that you've asked me that, my mind decided to just
they're all the same. They all look like the same. You just change the color every time.
Yeah, exactly. Now my mind's like, oh, there's no difference.
So like the biggest difference with it, which is crazy because it's really subtle, but it makes a difference. SMT is very tiny on the original cover. Nocturne it is just boom, Nocturne.
Yeah.
And then that's above it. Right now. Whereas you look at HD and it's like, oh yeah, like SMT is literally like the fucking 3. The 3's bigger than Nocturne.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. It's such a weird thing. Yeah.
Also, I know no one will ever admit it. It's just something I'm a dumb, like I mentioned, I'm a dumb font nerd. I take graphic design way too seriously for someone who makes such bad thumbnails. I will never understand why Atlas just straight up took the Final Fantasy font and then made it italicized and changed that SMT logo into the Final Fantasy font, because I will never be able to unsee it.
They were banking on like most people not noticing that, but yeah, I'm positive like you and every other like graphic designer person is like, oh my god, what is
if you
this?
can go into Google right now, look up the logo for SMT4 Apocalypse. That's where they first changed it. That they didn't even italicize it then. I remember I remember calling them out, and back when PR would talk to me. Like, if you look at the logo in the box art for Apocalypse, it's not even italicized, and it's a lot more obvious. That is just straight up the Final Fantasy font.
Yeah, actually it is. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, now I'm gonna see it forever.
I'm sorry, it's like the Resident Evil 6 giraffe blowjob. Once you see it, you can never look at that cover again.
Exactly.
But like, I remember messaging Atlas and being like, you guys know, like, no, I didn't even ask, like, oh, did you? Like, it was like, you look at it and you know that's what it is. My question was, why did you do it? And I thought it was so funny of, like, I had two answers. One, the PR answer, which at the time, I get it, you have to do it. Oh, these are distinct. This is how, no, it wasn't that it was distinct. Atlas PR, no joke to my face, said, no, this is what the logo always looked like. And then I'm like, ooh, homie, go to the SMT4 box that's literally right next to it. That logo, drastically different.
Oh my gosh, they were like gaslighting you.
But it's also, again, it's for fucking fonts. Nobody really cares. That's its own thing or whatever. I just thought it was so funny of and again, nobody goes into it. It's just a whole thing. But yeah, the logo thing alone, the fact that the 3 is there alone, I think can do nothing but confuse people. And the fact that the 3 is now larger than Nocturne just boggles my mind. Because think about it. When we're talking about this game, are you calling it SMT3?
Exactly. Most people will call it Nocturne. That's what I do, because Nocturne is as soon as you say it, it's faster to say, and people in the know instantly recognize the game. And I actually really like that they did that, because it kind of added its own sort of it added a sort of uniqueness, allure to the game in a way, adding that extra part to the title. So it is very weird that now they're kind of doubling down on the SMT3 aspect, especially since we discussed before, when it comes with the recent Persona games, they've taken out the Shin Megami Tensei. They don't, with Persona 5, they don't have Shin Megami Tensei Persona 5. It's just Persona 5. So it's why then did you make sure that we knew it was SMT3?
Yeah, it's you can't pick and choose when you want to be nostalgic. That's why it's so weird. It's we're trying to pay homage to the original game. We don't want to have a different name in America or whatever. Honestly, and I don't know if this is a hot take, I would rather fucking call this Lucifer's Call HD than SMT3 HD. Because it's even Lucifer's Call has more nostalgia to it than the 3 in that in the title.
Yeah, that's unfortunately true.
I will say, I know they would never do it, because God forbid they ever print anything fun. If they made the reversible box art, Lucifer's Call box art, that would be amazing. But they also couldn't do that because the box art for Lucifer's Call is hilariously lazy. Do you remember what the Lucifer's Call box art looks like?
I'm gonna look that up again, because this is actually a lot of fun.
It was I love Ghostlight. They're all fucking amazing people. It was just so funny. Hey, we gotta do something different for this one. They're let's just take the logo, a PNG of a drawing, and then let's just throw a Dante model. Because I love that people think the meme is the Dante logo. No, the meme is Dante's literally on the cover.
Oh, yeah, that's terrible. And then, the quality is so low. It looks like one of those deep-fried memes that you see online. it has like the same quality to it. Like they just made like a Xerox copy of like of the cover art and then just slapped it on there.
It's also like doubly weird because remember, it's it's literally it's a 2D drawing of Kaneko's drawing of Timmy Fiend against a 3D model. Like, imagine if Final Fantasy used half a mono and then half Nomura art for a cover.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, yeah, this is really weird. I'm just...
So, like, if they ever had, like, the, like, ability to make fun of themselves enough and were willing to do that, please, for the love of God, because, like, I don't think enough people talk about how hilariously awkward that Lucifer's Call cover is. We always remember the sticker, but I mean not the sticker. We always remember the featuring Dante meme, but like that's why I was like also kind of like sad when they made that blog post like trying to bring back the Dante thing. I was like, it's not your meme. Like, and this is gonna be like the most like dumb thing ever. It's kind of like cultural appropriation, like not actually, but like. That's a Ghostlight thing. Like, you guys, Atlas West never published anything with the featuring Dante logo on there. So, like, it's not really your guys' job to do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's... I guess for me, I just saw it, and I know it was more on the Sony blog, so I'm just assuming, like, you know, whoever did that thought it'd be, like, fun to just do it.
Well, that's the weird thing. It's on the Sony blog, but it's literally done by Ari, who does the Atlas PR.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's true, too. But I guess, like, you know, and especially meeting her, too, like, I just saw it, like, as, like, you know, she's so, like, passionate about stuff that she was just kind of being like, you know, hey, see, like we could poke fun at ourselves, too, and then it comes across as kind of, like, when your, like, mom or, like, dad tries to get in on, like, meme fun, and you're just, like... This doesn't have to do...
I guess I would have just, like... because I know that they are, like, so not busy. Like, Ghostlight Games still is around. Like, they're still doing stuff. Like, they would love to, like... Like, imagine how fun it would be, like... And I know that, like, Atlas never does videos anymore. But, like, remember going back to a positive for SMT4 Apocalypse? Remember, like, when they did that little video of them in the meeting room? Be like, what do we call Apocalypse or whatever? Like, trying to make a name.
Yeah, that was great.
Like, do a fun video like that. Imagine, like, how fun it would be, like... Someone at Atlas calls up Ross, who's in charge of, like, PR and community at Ghostlight, and they're like, hey, do you guys remember that cover for Lucifer's Call you guys did? And they're like, yeah. They're like, yeah, we're gonna need the Dante meme for it. Because there's a really funny history behind it, because I tried finding the original graphic designer for it. They literally have no idea who it was. The best part about that meme is, like, that meme's actually pretty big, at least in terms of, like, dumb nostalgia covers. Like I would say it's as popular as, like, the featuring Knuckles, like, the and Knuckles, like, level like that. The best part about that meme is literally until last year, Ghostlight had no idea that was a meme. Like, their president was like, wait, that's like a thing? Like, they just didn't know it was a popular at all. They just, like, they literally just threw that on there to throw it on there.
Exactly. It's just, like, I guess they just was like, they really needed a way to, like, promote it, so they felt, you know, if we just throw this big, ugly sticker on here talking about Dante, it'll just sell like hotcakes. Oh man! I mean, I'm glad they did it, but
it's one of those extra funny things of, like, I remember, especially with gaming magazines, you would see it, like, so often of, like, the reason that sticker was on there is because, like, literally Devil May Cry, for whatever reason, it was just one of those things that if you could say something was like Devil May Cry or was with someone from Devil May Cry, it weirdly, like, hit off well, and I don't understand why, but, like, I remember even, like, Capcom games being, like, from the studio who brought you Devil May Cry, and, like, this is Devil May Cry 1 era. Like, this was, like, Devil May Cry 3 was pretty late into the PS2 generation, so it's just very funny.
Seriously.
Well, that's enough complaining about hilarious box art that's bad for all the right reasons. Another thing I kind of wanted to run by you. Mm-hmm. We talked about, like, platform preference, and we talked about other stuff. I'm curious, like, for sales, how do you think this is gonna, like, kind of net out? Like, we talked about, like, consoles obviously gonna be the most preferred by, like, a lot of fans, but, like, at the end of, like, that first month, what do you think it's going to kind of lean into of like more people on Switch, more people on PS4? Because like it's kind of weird. Like I feel like I know more people who want to play this on Switch than anything.
I was gonna say, I think thinking about the general attach rates, I'm gonna bank that Switch will be the most sales.
So very like dumb history lesson, but I don't ever get a chance to talk with a lot of people about this. You know the really cynical reason why this game exists, right? Why Nocturne HD was made.
Well, wouldn't hurt to run it by just in case, you know.
there's a certain game that got announced in 2017 by Atlus that definitely was not coming out anytime soon. So as a preliminary measure back in probably early 2018, they literally started working on Nocturne because they knew SMT5 wasn't coming out anytime soon. And they got in this weird predicament of like, if you're Atlus and you want to promote SMT5, you literally have no other choice if you want to be cheap or efficient. Not like cheap is a bad thing. Listen, I eat a lot of cheap food, so I should know. If you want to be efficient and tie into the brand, you literally could only do Nocturne. You're not going to do DDS, because DDS doesn't really tie into the whole mythos of 5. You're definitely not going to do Devil Survivor or Devil Saga or any of like the other ones. Like you're not going to do the DS games. You're not going to do the 3DS games. Because like honestly, doing 4 would probably get people a lot more excited than a HD remaster of 3. But the problem is the DS and especially the 3DS, those assets are just the lowest resolution. Like if they wanted to ever remake Strange Journey properly, because like I always find it funny that like they quote unquote remade Strange Journey for 3DS. There's not that big of a resolution boost. It's like the art is what it is.
Exactly. Like there's some differences you can definitely see, like in terms of the dungeons. I was actually like I didn't realize it, and then I went back to DS. I'm like, okay, I see where they touched it up. But yeah, no,
But like as soon as you throw any of those games on a screen basically bigger than 720p, it's immediately like pixel compressed Garbo Town. So you have to do 3, which again is fine. Like 3 has a lot of nostalgia, and 3 hasn't been released in a ton of time. But it's just so funny of like 3 exists not for nostalgia. Remember, we're not in an anniversary year. It released in 2020. It wasn't celebrating anything. It wasn't celebrating any company. It's literally a marketing game, which again is fine. We all buy these games because we know they're there to make money. But it's just so funny. Like you never hear anyone talk about that. This game was made literally just as a please wait for SMT5. Just play this instead.
It does feel like it, yeah, honestly. And it was kind of what I was thinking too when they first announced it. I was like, oh, well, this is a pretty cool lead into 5, I guess, to get people's like interest peaked in the franchise. And then I was kind of also thinking about it too, like if they had ever wanted to remake or like at least port or remake, port or whatever 3, doing it before 5 releases would also be a good thing for this game, because it could kind of like get extra attention because of 5 and kind of coast off of that. So that's also what I imagine in 2. It's kind of like this like circular sort of thing where 3 helps out with promoting 5, but 5 also helps promote 3, because if you try to do 3 any other time, it's just not going to get the same level of attention. That's what I honestly feel like 3 has gotten so much attention as it has in terms of coverage because 5 is coming out.
Oh, so, yeah, 100%. Because remember, this got announced before a 5 trailer last year that Nintendo partner direct.
Yep, I remember. Yeah.
So I mean, honestly, it was even one of those things of I remember when this got announced. When I watched that trailer, I had 2 reactions. I was like, holy shit, Nocturne HD is really cool. And then I thought it was like, you know what? I would not be surprised if Nintendo wanted this to be, or not wanted to, if they paid to make this an exclusive. Like, if Nocturne HD was a PlayStation exclusive, I would have understood it just because the lead into 5. Obviously, no one wanted to pay for it, so whatever. But it now comes on to more platforms. But it was one of those things of, like, even though I'm planning on playing it on PlayStation, the sentiment right now is really funny. Like, SMT, as it is, has not really been on a PlayStation platform since, if we're talking like proper, Devil Summoner 2. So, like, Raito 2 was the last time a PlayStation game got a big, like, kind of push in that, like, ecosystem, and everything since then has just been Nintendo, Nintendo, Nintendo. So, yeah, like, 5 is a big reason. The lack of kind of history there. Like, when you saw Nocturne come out in Japan last year, remember, like, all the fan art that was coming out on Twitter, people being like, we can play SMT 1, 2, 3 on here, 4 on our DS, and 5 is coming soon. Like, people were excited in Japan because 3 was the only Nintendo one missing. Like, obviously there are many ports of it, but 3 had never touched a Nintendo system for this series that has always been on Nintendo platforms, even if it wasn't exclusive.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, it's an interesting thing of, this is one of those first rare times where, at least in the West, it really feels like Nintendo is going to kind of be the lead SKU for an Atlus game, which it's just never felt with anything. Catherine felt like an afterthought. Strikers was an option, but I feel like you just, like, even just judging by Twitter, like, I feel like when I was seeing people playing Strikers on Twitter 2 months ago, very rarely saw, like, Switch footage, you know?
That's true, yeah. Most of it was, like, you know, PS4, or even, like, the odd PC one, because, you know, you had a lot of people who really dug all the options you had for, you know, the frame rate, like, resolution, which is actually pretty cool. Like, I'm not going to lie, I actually really like that a lot, that the PC ports have been very good.
Well, I mean, the sad part is the PC ports of Strikers is now getting patches, while the console version is just kind of stuck never getting patches again, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, it does. And, you know, it's just, it's always because it's so much easier to push down that stuff for PC. Like, it's always a thing for it. But it does stink that the console versions are like, okay, you're good.
I have a great question for you. I need to get your opinion on this as just a fan and, like, as a critic in general. You didn't review Strikers anywhere, right?
No, I did not. That was Ryan Metzler with Dual Shockers. He reviewed Strikers.
Okay. So, how did you feel about Strikers audio balancing? Because that was literally, like, my biggest complaint about that game. Like, at the end of the day, the English, like, voice mix is just terrible.
Yeah, like, it's like, yeah, you do notice it, but then I'm thinking, like, well, I mean, what else were they gonna do? I mean,
see, I get that, but at the same point, it's kind of like this, where it's like, yeah, but you also could fix it. Like, if you didn't know it was a problem, like, people have let you know, and, like, they've just kind of been like, well, obviously it's cheaper to not touch it again. Like, you're like, they know we'll put up with it, but it does kind of put a stain on that of, like,
it is weird that they haven't fixed it in later patches. That's the problem. Like, if it was like an initial thing, I'm like, you know, it makes sense. Of course it's going to be weird. But like you said, it's like, you know, now that you're aware of it, I'm sure there's ways you could have, like, even things out a bit more and, like, well, like,
that's what sucks too, because, like, the PC version has extended options for voice and audio balancing. Like, you can actually do that yourself, but that's only on the PC version. They never added that into it because they basically paid Koei Tecmo to make a PC version after consoles, and they never paid them to go back and add it into consoles.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's just, it does really suck, honestly, that it's like, if you're on consoles, you're just stuck having to hear that audio balancing issue.
The only time it's, like, actually amazingly bad, like, I couldn't believe how, like, hard it was to hear stuff, that final boss fight in Strikers, you will never hear what everyone is saying. Everyone's talking over each other, and the boss is screaming, and, like, the attack is happening enemy. Like, literally, if you're not looking at, like, the subtitle box, there's no way you have any idea what anyone is saying. Like, it might as well just be, like either Muppet talk or, like, Charlie Brown adults talking. It just, they bleed together so bad. I could not believe it.
I know. That was really bad, actually. I was so glad at that point that I had subtitles enabled. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, and it only just kind of, like, it makes it look worse because A, remember the wait was so long, and B, is if you switch over to JP, it's flawless. Like, it is perfectly mixed in Japanese.
Yeah, it's just the English version. And it sucks because, I really like the English voice work, so I don't want to switch it. But like you said, when you do test it out in the Japanese, which you're like, oh my gosh, like what a difference! And it's just, it really just sucks. It's like, oh my gosh, am I getting punished for using the dub? Is that what's happening?
I just want to listen to Matthew Mercer be his best Yusuke possible. That's all I want.
Exactly. Like.
So this kind of leads into my next one, just because I've had no hands-on time with the English one. How have you noticed that the voice mixing has been for Nocturne, though, with the English voice acting?
Oh, okay. Well, honestly, it's a lot better, and I think it's because because Nocturne's pacing in general is so like deliberate, and you don't have characters like really speaking over each other like that, or not at all, or like anything like that. So in general, it comes out pretty smooth. Like I haven't personally heard anything. Yeah, I'm still keeping an ear open to see if there's any weird mixing or whatnot like later on. But yeah, right now it's very good.
Speaking of things that are not very good, but also kind of funny and unrelated, the first comment on the Atlas blog post about the history of the featuring Dante meme, shout out to Shrina did, who just says, "Bring back and remaster SOCOM 2 and Combined Assault on PlayStation 5, please."
Oh my God.
God bless the PlayStation blog. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. The first comment will always just be someone asking, "Why aren't you doing this?"
Exactly.
It's like the old days. I loved it. No matter what PlayStation blog post it was, back when people like used to go on it a lot more. Every comment, the first one was always, "PlayStation name change when? I need to change my name. Please. Please just let me change my name."
I remember that. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, that's pretty much it for like all the last questions I had for you about it. Like, oh my god, I'm scrolling through the comments. I gotta give a shout out to Nerve. If you ever hear this, please comment. Nervogo Proxy. If this came with the Steelbook, I'd be all over for it, but I think I'm gonna wait for a sale. If that person just dove into my mind and wanted to, like, put my thoughts on this game into, like, a tweet-sized comment, it's basically that. Needs a Steelbook, should have been cheaper.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Actually, no, I would want to, like, end on price one more time, because I've been very opinionated myself kind of talking about it, but for you, when you're reviewing and even previewing a game, does price ever tend to come up? Because I feel with a lot of critics, it comes up in terms of, and even with like comments, I get this a lot. Like in my video I did, a lot of comments come at me saying, "Well, it's a super long RPG. Like it's one of the best RPGs of all time. So because it's a long game, it's worth whatever price they ask."
Right. I think I try to mention pricing. Like I know when I did the Persona 5 Royal review, I did mention pricing before. I feel like it's because it's such a subjective thing, up until a certain point, of course. So I know some people, like when we were talking about it, we felt that either it should have been priced lower, or if you were gonna price it at 50, if you had more content like in it to justify that price tag, it would make more sense, as well as like if you had like Steelbook or like other pre-order bonuses, that would make more sense. But then there's some people, like you said too, who feel like just the length of it itself, the content that's already in the game already justifies the price. So I do try to mention it. I don't try to, I kind of keep it towards the end when I do discuss it in a review, because I feel like the review overall should be talking about like the quality of what's in the game. In general, I feel like that's the most important thing. But I do think at the very least, like even if it's a lot of differing opinions on pricing versus content, I feel like it's at least something worth mentioning. Like, hey, just so you know that this game is this much, I think that it's a bit steep for what it is, especially with, Royal, when I mentioned that it's a lot you can get the original P5 for very cheap. So it really just depends on you and how important this new content is. So I feel like that's how I usually try to tackle it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that, especially in terms of like coverage and stuff. Of like when I'm doing a review or even just covering a game, I am trying to keep it as timeless as possible. Like it shouldn't a review hopefully should never feel like a time capsule. Like you don't want it to just feel like, oh yeah, like unless it's something like weird like an MMO or like the original like launch of like No Man's Sky or something like that. Like, but it is important to have that kind of clarity for it, because like when you're recommending a game, I don't think enough people in the media ever seem to talk about this, of like when you're hearing, whether it be someone like me with like 3,000 subs or someone like Greg Miller with like like 250,000 subs, a lot of the time these people in like the media, more often than not, are reviewing this game as, I got this as the free game, I'm just going to talk to you about the game. Like outside of the whole Game Pass conversation, unless there was like some weird level of influencer like blowjobs that were going around, I will not understand how the fuck the entire media would not shut up about Outriders for like 2 weeks. And now you notice how no one talks about it. But like those first 2 weeks, it was like, Jesus, I get there's not a lot to play, guys, but like I couldn't pay people to talk about Oddworld Soulstorm, and everyone just wanted to talk about their fucking glitches and bugs and raids and Outriders. It was the strangest thing. So like that's why like even like my entire career, well yeah, my entire time covering games, I've always been very into the camp of, unless this is a weird case option, I always buy everything I review. I have never just like reviewed a game and been like, and it's off to the winds. Because I think no matter how much you say I get it, or like no matter how much someone who makes as much money as me or even a bajillion times more than me, I think having that financial cost into playing it really puts it into your head of like let's look at something like Days Gone. When people reviewed Days Gone and kind of gave it like the 6s and 7s and occasional 8s, people in the media, like, and if you go back and listen to how they describe it, they talked about that as like, I mean, it was free, but like I kind of wasted my time. Like I didn't love it. Like it was just like the equivalent of a okay Netflix movie. But like if you're someone who paid $60 for Days Gone, you weren't just gonna put it down like if it wasn't like unless it was super insulting to your intelligence. Like I know so many more people who bought Days Gone at launch who were like, I love this game. Like I bought this, I'm going into this because I invested time, I believe in this game, and there are a lot like your headspace is just different between I'm playing a game that I bought and I'm playing a game that I am reviewing. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that is a big. Honestly, it really is, because I do have to find myself like, remembering too about that. Like, hey, I got this for free. So even if I didn't enjoy it, it wasn't any financial burden for me. But imagine someone who paid, like you said, $60 for this game, and it just was not like. It had problems, So that's why even if I don't go into pricing too much, I at least try to make sure things that I write in terms of reviews is as thorough as possible, so whoever's reading it can just be as informed as they possibly can about that game. Because I feel like, it is important, because I know if I'm paying $60 for a game and it's a bad game, I'm going to be very upset. And it doesn't happen to me as often anymore because I'm extremely careful when I do buy games. But it has still happened. Like, I'm still thinking about, what was the recent Dissidia game that came out? It was the one that was. It was the one for
Dissidia NT. Oh man,
yes, NT.
Yeah, that was. That one hurt like a lot.
That did. Like that hurt me so much. I was like, I wanted to like this game because I love Dissidia. Like I played both games on PSP. Like I adored it, and then I was so excited. I saw it was 3-on-3. I was like, I'm not a big fan of this, but I wouldn't believe it could work, and then it just didn't. Like, it was so bad.
As someone who like, I went into that with like a recipe for like success of like, oh, it's super Spencer bait. I love Final Fantasy. I love Dissidia. I'm a huge fan of fighting games. It's finally on consoles. That game launched with 5 fucking steelbooks at once.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if people remember, the North American pre-order bonus was you get 1 of 3 randomized steelbooks that you don't know unless you buy. And, like,
Yeah.
I was all in. I was like, let's go. I love Koei Tecmo. I love Team Ninja. What can go wrong? And I remember I played the beta, and I was like, holy shit. The beta was so bad I canceled my pre-orders. I had like a bajillion dollars lined up for this game, and I was like, whoa, this was really bad.
It really was. I couldn't believe it. Like, oh. So it's like I get it, you know. It's been a while, but I do feel that pain too when you buy or pre-order and you're just really looking forward to that, and then it's just so bad. So
it's a very visceral, different thing of like, it's not like you're irate because you wasted your money. It becomes more personal. It's like it's like the difference between this. Oh my god, did you see that dog got ran over? That's horrible.
Yeah.
Oh my god, my dog got ran over.
Yeah. That's perfect. That's exactly the difference.
It's like, at the end of the day, I love all dogs, but if it's my dog, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little more upset about it than the guy with a million Twitter followers. That's why, like, I have, like, no, like, fire against anybody. Like, I understand. It's just, you're just in such a different headspace, especially people who, like, are actual influencers and stuff. But, like, when you have someone who, like, lives in a $100,000 something, like, house or whatever, and gets pretty much everything to them, like, sent for free without ever having to ask, and you're like, trust me, I know the value of dollars. I'm like, I guarantee you do not. Thank you for trying, though. Man in state that costs 9 times as much as mine.
Exactly.
And it's just so funny, like, how it is, like, such a different thing of, like, I was talking to somebody once of, like, California especially is, like, it's so funny that the industry is so primarily based there for so many people, whether it be making games or covering games, but, like, if you, like, live in California and then, like, move away like a lot of people did over the course of last year and go somewhere new, it's so funny when you see people like, oh my god, look, I can buy a house for, like, 12 months rent here. It's like, it's like, even, like, because it's not like it's just a West Coast, East Coast thing. Like, yes, New York is really expensive, but, like, look at the size of your apartment or wherever you live, and if you put that in, I guarantee no matter where you look in California, no place will give you the same dollar for space as where you live even in New York.
That's true. And that's what boggled my mind, because I thought New York rent prices are bad, which they are. And then when you look at California, you're like, wow, people live here.
It's so crazy. Like, I remember I had an offer once to, like, go work at a job. Like, I would have really loved it, but I would have had to move to California, and I was like, I love this job, I don't love it enough to, like, eat ramen for the rest of my life and still have to live with 3 roommates. So, like, there are just concessions you have to make. Like, it was really funny. I had a friend on Twitter last night. She was like, I'm thinking of, like, she lives in like LA. She's like, I'm thinking of moving. Does anyone, like, know anything about Las Vegas? Like, do you think it's cheaper than California? I'm like, oh my god, anywhere is cheaper than California. Vegas, as long as you don't mind the Strip being the Strip, Vegas is dirt cheap. It is meant for, like, that city is designed to keep alcoholics and gambling addicts there as cheap and as long as possible.
Literally, yeah. And then, like, what doesn't hurt either is because, you know, they have desert, so if they need to, they can expand into that. The fact that because of that housing market bubble, like, there's so many houses there that are still abandoned, so you can, like, get those dirt cheap. Apartments are super cheap. Like you said, there's just no comparison. Like
New York, though, we could have our own, like, hour and a half long discussion about the living situation, though. New York is insane. I remember, like, I got in this, like, weird YouTube rabbit hole of guys going around New York showing locations and then showing their price, and it was just mind-boggling. Of like, here's a 2-bedroom house in Brooklyn with 3 broken windows and only half a sink for the bathroom. It's $300,000. I'm like, what on earth?
It's amazing.
Yeah. So if you live in anywhere that's expensive, I don't care if it's in America or not. My hat is off to you. You are very dedicated. I'll go back to living in the Midwest and being scared of gas prices ever going over $4.
Exactly. I know that has to be. To me, it's a worthwhile trade-off because I live in New York, but I'm like, dang, if I could go, I would absolutely move, like, just for something way cheaper if I could, like, right?
I always, like, when I talk to people about it, it's always, like, a different thing of, like, I'd love to, like, move somewhere cheaper and have so much more money, but then at the same point, I always have, like, friends telling me, it's like, man, like, blah, blah, blah may be expensive, but fuck, there's, like, not a lot of, like, there's only one New York in America.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very unique kind of thing. Like, no matter where you go, there will be trade-offs, no matter, like, how much cheaper it is to live.
Absolutely. I do love this city, even though it drives me up the wall. Like, it's just something about it. It's like it's just not replicated anywhere else. And and it's hilarious because, like, when Mom had moved to Alabama, and she loves it down there, but, like, there are so many things she misses about New York, and it's hilarious hearing her complain about this, like, that I could just eat whatever I want, like, any type of food from any culture, it's just at my fingertips, and, like, meanwhile, she can't find, like, goat, or, like, a good slice of pizza. Like, that's, like, too much for Alabama.
I remember having to explain that I have a love-hate relationship with bagels because I've had good bagels. And it's like, oh, I love bagels, but I probably haven't had a real bagel in like 2 years because I'm like, oh, dude, I'm not gonna ever go to a fucking grocery store and buy a bagel. I need to make sure that people are getting like good fucking like water for their bagels and stuff, or else I'm not even like gonna waste like my time because like I grew up on places that were like, no, like we get our shit from like there was a place in like Arizona when I grew up that literally like was like the only place I've ever had that makes a perfect like New York bagel, and it just ruined me for everywhere else.
Yeah, it does. Like, yeah, bagels, pizza, like, those things are ruined. Like, you can't go anywhere else and then just eat it, and it's just like, you taste the difference.
Man, I really just want to eat some just garbage food right now. So we should end this. Thank you so much for doing a part 2 of this. Did you have any other last little like kind of things you wanted to either vent or things you wanted to talk about in this preview extravaganza? God knows how long this will be episode.
I just wanted to mention, because like I was thinking about it too when you asked me before, like, were there any voices that really surprised you? The first one that did, like, within the actual game was how much I really like Yuko's voice a lot. Like, it really, and it definitely extends like further into the game. Just because it, like, the VA, Laura Post, like, she really has a lot of that nice complexity that Yuko had. Like, just conveys it so well, and then also too, like, the voice stuff is just very soothing. Like, you like, from the voice alone, you can see why students flock to this character so much and why they trusted her. Like, she has like a lot of like casual authority, but like also a lot of like, very down to earth, very sweet. And it was just kind of interesting that like she was able to convey that so much in that voice. So that was a big one that I loved. And the second one that I really, really liked too was the VA who did Hijiri's voice. It was oh my god, his last name, I feel so bad I'm gonna butcher it. Actually,
here, you know what? I have it pulled up. I'm terrible at ever saying anyone's name, so I can keep the tradition going. Chris Turglefera.
I think so, yeah. Yeah. His voice is great for Hijiri. And I like it because, like, it has such a nice, rich, like, once again, like, almost soothing quality to it, And I think it's so fitting because for the game, like, Hijiri is really your only, like, almost like friend or comrade, because he's the one that you really talk to like a lot. He really helps you out, and it's like he's that person that you're gonna hear and see a lot, and to have that kind of rich, nice voice to pair with him, it works really well. Like, this is a guy like you're gonna want to keep seeing, at least for me, like every time I get to hear his voice in the game, it's like a treat. Like, I love it. So I just wanted to fangirl about that.
Okay. I actually thought of like two other things really quick that are new for the game, but actually haven't really like gotten like a lot of talk.
Mm-hmm.
One is super easy. I just kind of want to pick your brain about. How do you feel about the suspend save feature? Because I feel like I like it, but just like I never felt like in my original playthrough of Nocturne, like, oh my god, like the saves are really spread out. Like I thought they were okay. I think that'll be something that definitely is probably more helpful on Switch than like a console or PC though.
Yeah, I agree. I think I like the suspense. I'm always a fan when you give other ways for people to save, especially like, and I agree. I think this is why on Switch it's so valuable because if you're playing on the go, especially like for me, I commute a lot. So there may be times where I am like in between saves and I'm just like, okay, I got to turn this off, but I don't want something to happen with like this thing and I lose my data. Oh, I could just suspend save and then it's like bam. So I think it's really, really great for that. I feel like it could help. It could be decent too on like on PS4, PC, but I don't think it has the same amount of usefulness. But once again, I'm always just fine with them adding in. But I do think looking back at Nocturne, like when I'm playing it, I'm realizing how many terminals they do have in the game. Like I'm like, oh wow, it's actually pretty well spaced out.
And so the other one, which was technically a patch, but I guess everyone will just get it day one because there's no patch lined up at the moment for pre-release.
Yeah.
It'd be really funny if they get another patch like in Japan like right before the American release, just to prove like if they've like been holding on to a fuck you haters patch, that'd be actually I would respect the hustle of like they have a patch that fixes everything, but they're only gonna release it the night before the Western release. So just to screw everyone over, whoever wants to like, just so they can be like, the game's fixed, you just gotta patch it, baby. But no, one of the things that I'm like surprised that like not even PR like brought up skill inheritance. It got patched into Japan, but like it's gonna be default for the Western version. How did you feel about how they handled skill inheritance?
Yeah, so actually, I felt so silly. Like I actually didn't realize what they did with it at first. Like, because I was actually automatically going into that mode of like, when you had to do the sort of like what I like to call grinding for skills, when you have to keep like undoing and then redoing the fusion. So I did that at first, and then I realized there was an option at the bottom that you can just randomize the skills. By pressing like one of the buttons. I think it's I want to say it's the Y button on the Switch. I'm trying to remember. But yeah, you can just randomize it. I'm like, oh my god, like this is way easier. Although then I'm thinking, wait, if they did this, why did they just let you pick the skills?
I know, it's like every little improvement they ever did with it, especially because like that was like one of the biggest things when this got announced. People were like, oh my god, can you do skill inheritance? And it was like, no. And then it was like, okay, well, whatever. I guess either they couldn't do it or they just didn't want to. And then when they added it in like a month and a half later, it was like, wait, if you could do this, why didn't you change X, Y, or Z? Like, it's like, exactly. If you could do this, what the hell did you do the rest of that for?
Yeah, it was like, could it just like let you pick the skills? I guess like God forbid, like you have to have some like difficulty on this too, but.
My only hope is like some intern named Timmy, once the game came out, saw the reviews and that there was no skill inheritance. He's like, guys, I debugged for 3 months. It's in the game. Like, oh god, Timmy, you did that? We gave you that as a project to like not actually finish. We didn't think you'd actually do it. All right, we'll throw it in the patch.
Aww.
It's just especially one of those funnier things, just because like you have so many of those little convenient features of like, no matter what happens, and I say this obviously, I'll be proven horribly wrong, but it's like in a world we live in now, you can't release Persona 3 without full party control. Even though that's how the original was, you would get absolutely lambasted by fans.
Exactly.
Well, that's a whole lot of talking about a game that is, by some miracle, a whole month away, or less by the time everyone hears this. Is it weird, like, for you, whenever I have a game, like, really early, and you're like, why is the release date so far away? It's like, it's done. Like when it's in your hands, it's like it's real, but because not everyone has it yet, it like kind of like it's almost like so far. Then by the time you're done with the game and the review, you kind of like will be out of the hype cycle for it. Like when you've beaten it, everyone will have just started it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be very jarring because I'm just gonna be like I've had enough of this. like playing it for like a full month. I'm like, all right, I'm moving on. And then, like you said, everyone's just gonna get into it. And it's like, oh man, like I really wish people had this a month ago.
If you want to know. If you want to know, like, the most hellish version of that, I got Animal Crossing New Leaf on 3DS 2.5, almost 3 months before release. And by the time it released, I just totally burnt out on playing it, so I never got to, like, enjoy Animal Crossing on 3DS with friends.
Oh, man, that stinks.
But I mean, also, like, getting a game that early is always at the same time also one of those things like, oh, this is so great. But, like, especially something like Animal Crossing where, like, you want to hang out with friends and, like, trade stuff. It was just like, I can't properly enjoy having this game early.
Oh, man, that really... I think the only time when I got a game, like, super early and I was still able to enjoy it just fine was the original release for Mario Kart 8. You know, because it's Mario Kart.
Oh,
so I
yeah.
played for a full month, you know, and then I was just so excited. And then once it came out, super excited. Like I finally got to play with people, like with this. That was the only one. But any other time, like you said, it's like you get it early, and then people get it, and you're like, you're already just done. Like you don't want to look at it again.
It's like so funny because like that's around the same era of Nintendo. Like 2012 was New Leaf and 2014 was Mario Kart 8, but like man, before people really started like pirating and like I don't know like who these weirdos are who get review codes but then I guess like just upload them and let people just download all like the review ROMs. Like Nintendo used to be crazy about like they would give reviews out so far ahead of time, and now unless you're a really really big player, Nintendo will never give you a game early for review. Like they give it to you as late as humanly possible.
Yeah, that is true.
But I mean, I will never understand how Nintendo is. I get Nintendo is popular, but like Nintendo for like downloading illegal ROMs, like there are so many people who like get like if you want to play like a Nintendo game, like I bet you even right now, I'm gonna put this out there, and it's not a challenge. I bet you someone has already ripped the ROM of Nocturne in English, and it is probably there for someone to download if you want. Like it's just like the stuff just gets uploaded so early, and it's just insane to me. But I mean, I guess it's easy for people. Like I've never been into like pirating or like hacking your stuff for it, but it's like, man, it's got to just be like so disheartening when like you've worked on this thing and even before it's out to the public, it's just like, oh yeah, it's free if they're hacked. It's like, oh my god.
Like it boggles my mind. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Like how people will like just have it already like completely hacked, like uploaded and just like available. And I'm just like, man, that really does stink. Like, you know, being so excited about this game that you worked hard on, like can't wait for it to release. And then you find out like, oh yeah, actually someone just released the entire game online and now everyone's just talking about it like a month before it comes out. It's like, oh man.
Oh, alright, well, I am terrible at ending things. Thank you once again for coming on the show. It was so much great talking with you about one of my favorite games, apparently, that I will do nothing but complain about. But I promise, I do love Nocturne.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Like, this is a blast, too, and I totally get how you feel, so.
I want to just throw this out there. If you guys are possibly not sure what the next Megaton Marathon is about, you guys could be really cheeky and just upload the same episode next month and then just put an HD. See what it would... Like, alright everybody, the new episode is Nocturne HD. It's the same episode, but we just put HD in front of the title.
Exactly.
It's the same episode cover art too, it's just got the yellow filter on it.
And then we also put a Lucifer's Call, like...
Thank you so much, everyone. All of our stuff we said in the middle of the podcast that we thought was going to be the outro, that's still going to be there. It'll be in the show notes and everything else for before. So this is going to be our awkward goodbye, so we can finally leave and go back to playing Nocturne. So goodbye,
Exactly.
everybody.
Take care.